I think gatekeeping is one of those things that has a positive and a negative aspect to it, and really how good or bad it is depends on where it's falling in the line. But the way I look at it, if it's like, why do museums and art galleries exist, right? It's like people take care of things and they want to preserve stuff that they've put time and effort into and have reverence for. Now imagine if someone just went into a museum, just ripped a painting off the wall and went and like exploited it for money with no real love for what they were doing. It's like, well, it's the same thing. So like, if you're going to take, yes, that's fine, you can take something from somewhere, but what are you giving back in return?
Greetings, Legion, and welcome to episode 255 of Into the Necrosphere, my first appearance for 2025 after living the good life in South Africa, now back in the deep freeze of the United Kingdom. And if you have followed this podcast for more than 12 months, you know that I have a standing tradition whereby at the beginning of every new calendar cycle, I count down, I dissect, I examine, I analyze, and I celebrate the very best music of the past 12 months. Joining me for the first installment of my countdown of the top 30 albums of 2024 is Nathan Glover. Nathan Glover is the frontman for Australian black metal battalion Graveir. He is also one of the head honchos at Prince Cabal, a record label dedicated to doing great things in the Asia-Pacific underground. He is in a number of other bands. He's also a very good friend of mine and a hell of a nice guy. He is going to be joining me very shortly, but before we get to that, we need to whet the appetites with some unsanctioned filth. Necro Ritual are, in my opinion, one of the very best bands in the English black metal scene. They have just put out a new single entitled Threads. It serves as a taster for their forthcoming full-length album. More on that in due course, maybe over the next couple of weeks, maybe the next couple of months. In the meantime, though, I love this song. I know you will too. Necro Ritual kicking us off this week on Into the Necrosphere. That was a track called Threads, their brand new single. If you want to check out their back catalog, head over to Bandcamp. I'll post the Necro Ritual Bandcamp in the description to the podcast. And nearer the time that this new album gets released, I'll almost certainly have somebody from the band on the show. I absolutely love that track, and I love the music video too. So let me know what you guys think of it. But I think I know my audience well enough to know that you guys would have dug that. I also happen to know that most of you are already followers of the Horsemen of the Podcasting Apocalypse, but just in case you're not, and maybe you're new to Into the Necrosphere, the Horsemen of the Podcasting Apocalypse are an elite unit of content creators dedicated to squashing, terminating mediocrity wherever we find it. We fill your week from Monday to Sunday with a very highest quality entertainment, starting with Horror Wolf 666, hosted by Brandon Legion every Monday Every Tuesday, yours truly casts hexes and slays poses on Into the Necrosphere. I've been away for a couple of weeks, but I'm back now. Clearly, the old grey matter isn't working quite as efficiently as it should just yet, but I had a fucking fantastic holiday and excited about what the next year holds for this podcast. I'm going to be going to a couple of festivals, already have multiple guests in the pipeline, and of course, next week I'll be coming your way with part 2 of my countdown of the best 30 albums of 2024, the definitive list of the best albums, because unlike a lot of other websites and fucking podcasts, I don't release my best of list in October or November. I'm not doing this for clicks. I'm doing this because I take it seriously. Anyway, moving on to Wednesday, we've got Sensei Mike Hill with another episode of Everything Went Black. We also have my very good friend Cheyenne of the band Trivax and his podcast Iblis Manifestations. On a Thursday, we have got Necromaniacs, one of my very favorite podcasts of the week. That is hosted by Sensei Mike Hill. He is joined by the outlaw Mike Scandado, as well as the Professor Jeff Kashid, and they review new and old horror movies. Always excellent value and a great way to get yourself set up for a weekend's viewing. On a Sunday and also on a Thursday, we've got Soul Knox, hosted by the Reverend Carl Haikara, the Sinister Minister. He takes you on a dark and twisted journey through the weird, the occult, and the esoteric, and he will be one of my co-hosts on next week's episode of the podcast, a man of impeccable taste, so I'm very interested to hear what some of his favorite albums for 2024 were. You'll find out next week, so make sure you tune in for that. Finally, just a reminder that once we get to the end of my conversation with Nathan, don't go anywhere, because you guys are due a news rant. I was about to say a new news rant, but another news rant, the first news rant for the year. Lots to catch up on, including new music by Spiritworld and a bunch of other bands. New Scour single is out. We need to talk about what an absolute scumbag Tim Lambesis is. So, lots to discuss in the final hour of the show. Before we get to that, though, allow me to welcome my very good friend, Nathan Glover of Graveir, back to Into the Necrosphere. Greetings, young man. Welcome to the first episode for Into the Necrosphere for 2025. This is I think, I was mulling this over before we got started. I think this is the third time that you have participated in the best albums countdown, if memory serves me correctly. And I mean, part of the reason I always bring you on the show is because you always have very left field ideas that then, for the subsequent episodes that I do, make me think, why did I miss that? It would have been perfect. It would have been a shoe-in for number 15 or whatever the case may be. But it's great to see you again, man. How's everything going?
Yeah, good. Been really flat out for the start of 2025, to be honest. So I think when we last chatted, I just ducked off to see Mayhem for their 40th anniversary show. So that was great, as you'd expect.
I was about to say, how was that?
Yeah, it's 2 hours of Mayhem with they picked sort of a boutique theater to do as the venue, and just put a bit more money into the stage production than what you get for a typical show.
I was about to say, did they have the whole the pomp and the pageantry when you saw them? Because I've seen clips of that, and everything I've seen looks absolutely incredible.
Yeah, they definitely did, and they also they covered the full era. So they even did some of the stuff from albums like Audio KO and Chimera, which to me are actually just like their peak period for me. So I was pretty happy. And also my friend's band Host did, I guess they were the opener, but they're like an ambient noise group. So it was like an instrumental lead up to it, but it was perfect because it just set the tone for everything and kept everything really uneasy. And I think for a show like that, when you're going to get a full sort of career overview of a band like Mayhem, you kind of don't want another band maybe like taking any energy out of it, but like that worked perfectly. And tomorrow I'm off to see Cavalera, and then after that we've got the Immeasurable Darkness Festival 3, so Hebephrenic will be playing on that, which is Chris's other band.
Cool.
And then Wardruna, so that will be January gone. And somewhere in between that, the Graveir album's coming along, so we've tracked the bass and all the guitars for that and the drums. So beginning of March, I'll knock the vocals over, and with any luck, we'll see it this year. So
you guys are thinking
I'll send you something as soon as it's done.
Maybe like a mid-year release,
depending on label. So I think that's the thing, is just chatting to people and seeing what their release schedules are like, and if we can't find any takers, maybe we'll just do it ourselves. To be honest, so but it would be good to do that one. I think it would be good to get someone to pick that one up and kind of push that one maybe further than what we've been able to do ourselves in the past, and being probably a bit more locally focused. So we'll see.
Are you part of Hebephrenic as well?
No, I'm not. So that's Chris.
So you're just gonna just there to because I was thinking you aren't part of it from my knowledge, from as far as I can recall. But I was just checking myself. Getting back to Mayhem and having the ambient thing at the beginning, I kind of see what you're saying. I was scratching my head a little when they announced. I speak under correction here, but I think Void of Voices, which is Attila's ambient project, I think that opened the show for the US. And I said at the time when I spoke to Katie about this, that to me is a misstep, because Attila is like, he is the show, and I'm just, again, I'm quite old school and I'm all about the pomp and the pageantry when it comes to how a band should present themselves, especially a band like this. Like you don't unveil the one of the main stars before the main event. So I was always a bit like, I get why you want to do something like this, but why would it be, get another ambient project? And I know they had Mortis do some of these dungeon synth stuff. I mean, it would have been nice if they got a band that was, a man's band. some good music. I could have thrown a real curveball, got Impaled Nazarene to open for them. So
70% less goblin.
Yeah, no, for sure. But no, dude, I'm glad you enjoyed it. I was looking at the set list as well. Marloom, Bad Blood, Mylab, or Milab, or whatever the fuck however it's pronounced. Cywar, Eliminate, one of my favorite Mayhem songs. You had a whole bunch of the old stuff, and then you had 4 Demistries Dom Satanas songs, and then you had 5 90 to or 80. They have it down here on Setlist FM as 1990 to 1984. So I don't know. You went back in time in the DeLorean, and you heard the usual stuff that they finish off with, which is Chainsaw, Guts, Fuck, Carnage, and Pure fucking Armageddon.
Yeah, it did make me go back too, because I guess they'd started with they played the Esoteric Warfare stuff, and I was like, that's an album that like people kind of don't really talk about. So it was fun to sort of go back and revisit and test as to why that might be. Because all the parts are there, but I think it's just that they're all there, but there's just something that I don't know what it is, that it just doesn't quite hang together. But there's some really cool stuff in there where I think on Demon they sort of fell into that groove with that new lineup a bit better. Like it's not a bad album by any means, but it's just interesting that no one sort of mentions it. And you listen to the songs live, you're like, these songs are actually pretty good. Let me go back and see why it didn't stick.
I've always been a fan of Esoteric Warfare. I think Posthuman is an incredible track. I think the first 2, Watchers and Cywar, are brilliant. I'm the same as you in the sense that I'm surprised no one talks about it, but it's not even that I don't think it's a good album. I think it's excellent. I don't think they've really, with the exception of Grand Declaration of War, they've never put out a record that I thought was terrible. And I think even Grand Declaration of War has, in time, my feelings on it have softened a little. I think there's actually some very good songs on there. I think, part of what jarred everybody is the production, but it's not per se a terrible record.
Yeah, well, I grabbed the remaster, and the remaster does a lot to, I guess, put those songs in a much better light than the original recording. Still not keen on the Def Jam Poetry Slam stuff, which probably fits better with Maniac's newer projects than it does on that. But I guess he was trying to push the boat out.
Def Jam Poetry Slam.
But yeah, the remaster did change my opinion on it a lot more because I think it let the ideas that are in the music speak a lot more clearly.
All right, mate. Well, here's how we're going to do the countdown. So we're going to do your top 10. There'll be a little bit of a musical interlude, and then I am going to count down numbers 30 to 21 of my top 30 of this year. So this, of course, the real deal countdown, when Decibel put out theirs back in, the very first week of November, everyone was like, oh, this is okay, but this is poser shit really at heart. We're waiting for that Into the Necrosphere countdown. So
it's like there can only be one. And
exactly.
Sorry, Decibel.
Exactly. And I am going to rant about, these fucking websites and podcasts and YouTube channels putting out their countdowns before they've clearly listened to every single thing that's come out over the course of a year. As I've said before, it's not something that's hugely important in the grand scheme of things, but if you're going to do it properly. And do not, as Decibel claim that we've heard everything. You fucking definitely haven't, because you left out. I mean, they did leave out some very, very key releases, in my view. And so did everybody who put out their stuff early. The only reason they put it out early, in my opinion, is because they want the clicks. And over here, I'm not so fussed about that. If my feeling is, if I'm going to do a countdown, it needs to be something that I do properly.
Yeah, agreed. I always do at the end of the year. I always do a sweep of everyone else's top 10s just to pick up the things that weren't on my radar at all. And sometimes you just find some things that are otherwise you never would have found, in some really good picks. I found a couple of those this year, so I find the process is always worth it.
Well, I can also assure people that a lot of the stuff that came out in the last 12 months, that I almost feel, I mean, if you like it, that's fair enough, but I almost feel like in some ways it's expected that those need to be on people's lists. And I would go one step further and say, in some cases, I wouldn't be surprised if an email was ever leaked one day that indicates some quid pro quo in exchange for that album being released. There is, of course, none of that on this top list. So, some of those band, one band like that comes to mind rhymes with Slow Beth. So not on my list, because I don't listen to fucking shit. So, all right, let's get down to brass taxes. Your number 10.
Okay, well, in as is tradition, I'm going to have no numerical order. These are the 10 albums that stuck with me the most, and depending on which day it is and what mood you catch me in, any of these could be number one. So, but I'll just go from the top. So the first one I had on my list was Vitriol, Suffer and Become. I don't think too many surprises in this one. But I think why I like this album probably the most out of anything they've done is Vitriol really kicked out of the gates with just 100% berserker fury. It was very raging and frothing and very attacking. And they've maintained that on this too, but I guess they've also found, I was having a discussion the other day, I think it might have been with Drugoth, just around what's worse, if you're constantly being punched in the face, or if you get punched in the face and then someone takes a break only to resume doing it 30 seconds later. It's the latter, because you know what it feels like to not be doing. And I think this is the thing that they picked on. So they found some layers of sort of black metal ambience, some really weird and off-putting guitar parts, some parts that seem a bit calmer, but I think on the surface they're calmer, but it's almost like a rip. There's that swirling chaos underneath, but it puts some lulls into things because it's about to pick you up and slam you again. And not to mention that, but I think the imagery that Kyle's used in the lyrical content is top notch, fantastic. So big fan of this record. I think it's the best thing that they've ever done, and I kind of hope they keep on this path because I can see the trajectory of the things that they put out, taking this tack. Like, if they can refine that even more, like, sky's the limit in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. It certainly got a lot of people talking. It was a great album to kick off the year because it came out on January the 26th. Best record they've ever done. It's a very complex album, both lyrically and musically. There's an awful lot going on under the surface, and it's a record that rewards multiple listens. I think the main thing that I'm where I feel some degree of sympathy for Kyle, and kudos to him for continuing as a two-piece band, is that, as they were kind of hitting their stride live, obviously they had a bit of an exodus in membership. Leaving Kyle to be the sole original member, I've spoken to him. He seems to me like a very nice guy. I know Cheyenne's very close to him as well. But I would suggest he's probably quite intense to work with, which, maybe he has expectations of himself technically and from in terms of performance that others can't necessarily match. But great record. I think absolutely fantastic. Best thing they did. Bizarre that it did seem to, as much as it got people talking, it also split opinion. If you go to Metal Archives, it's got a 62% average on the review, which I'm very surprised by. Because it is super aggressive, super heavy, but it never lands in the tropes of some of the deathcore nonsense, and a lot of the pretenders, the guys that are all show and no go. There's plenty of go on Suffer and Become.
Yeah, definitely a big fan. And look, I think I think you hit the nail on the head around Kyle, and I think he's actually even said that himself. He's like I can acknowledge where I'm maybe difficult to sort of work with, and he seems like a guy that's pretty aware of himself as well. So and I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, but it's just at a certain point for some people they can't necessarily hang around in that environment. And again, I think he's driven enough that he'll pick up and continue on, as you say. So, yeah, look, and I think with regards to the score being split on the album, I think anything that's pretty intense and challenging in the way that it is, and really like a lot of art that is good is probably going to split opinions, right? Because people feel strongly about it one way or the other. So I would almost be more worried about like middle, like things that are sort of too middling. Like if everything's a low score, okay, it's probably bad. But if like it's super split, you're like, okay, this is probably potentially really good because it's forcing people to have a strong response to it.
Yeah, you never want as an artist, I would imagine. I've never put out an album of my own, but as an artist, someone in your shoes, you never want indifference to be the reaction to your music. Rather love it, rather hate it. At least it's a response. But indifference is, I think, the worst possible thing. Like in life, they always say when it comes to the ladies, if when you meet somebody, it's better that she hates you because there's a thin line between love and hate. The difference is what's the real killer.
Yeah, true.
Okay, next up.
Okay, so next one on the list, and look, I have to say, 2024 I feel was like a good year for sort of dissonant avant-garde type music. So there was probably a few contenders in this category that could easily be on a list, and if I had a longer list, probably they all would be. But I guess in that sort of bucket, the one that spoke to me the most and has stuck with me the most is Convulsing Perjurance. So I guess look, Brendan is a good friend of mine, and I appreciate his passion and dedication on things. And even where we agree or disagree, I always enjoy the conversation with him. And I think as far as what he's done on this album, again, it's that effort and attention to detail. So every song, lyrically and musically, is very tied together. So if there's a song there around temples, and then the riff kind of sounds like a rock rolling down the side of a temple. Like it's all everything's tied together really well. And it's just showing like a bit of thinking of how to bring everything together to create a complete picture. And I mean, there is a lot of interesting musical stuff happening there. That's quite complicated, but I guess the thing that doesn't get lost in it is the aggression. So even vocally, obviously Brendan's in alters and that as well, but he knows how to deliver a performance that's forceful. And the risk sometimes with things that are a little bit more, I guess, progressive in nature is that the teeth can disappear from it. But I think he does a really good job of retaining the teeth to it. It does have a sort of anxiety-ridden, unhinged edge on it, which he manages to retain. And even so on the production, everything's very finely balanced. And I think, like, I don't know if people will pick it up listening to it or not, but for me, I can hear how much effort has gone into it and how all those parts have come together, and I find it frankly fairly impressive. So that would be one I'd hardly recommend, and not just because we're friends. I'm just making a caveat, but I think similar to what you've said, Jackie, when your friends do things, you're in an interesting position in that, like, if it's bad, I would rather just not talk about it. So, but I would be harsher on it because I know that person, and I know what they're capable of, and whether something's good or not. But if it's bad, I'd rather just not talk about it publicly. But if it is good, I also want to strip away like that personal connection and think about ignoring that. Is it good? And this absolutely is.
I think that's a fantastic point, because I obviously find myself in that position increasingly, because I'll get people on the show, get on really well with them, probably maintain some degree of contact afterwards, and sometimes they'll send me stuff and it'll be just I'll kind of listen to it and go, this isn't really doing it for me. I think subconsciously I'm actually harsher on the music that my friends put out, because I don't ever want to create that impression that I'm liking something purely because it features people that I know or that I get on with. So definitely that's one. But likewise, if it's a friend of mine and they've put out something that's great, I'm happy for them. I like to celebrate the success of my friends. I'm not the kind of person where you come across these folks in everyday life where even though they're your mate, they can't seem to stand when anything good comes your way, because that somehow casts them in a bad light. And I've never been that way. Whether it's in a friend of mine getting promoted, or whether it's a friend of mine in a band who puts out a record that I think is top notch, you really want to celebrate and promote that. So no, I get 100% where you're coming from. I have a question for you with regards to the album cover for this, because I'm sure a lot of the detail behind how some things were put together. I'll flash up the art on the screen when I edit this, but it's one of the most intriguing and one of the most artistically beautiful covers I think I've seen on a record in quite some time. Do you by any chance know who did that?
Not off the top of my head, but I can quite easily get that detail for you. So happy to go away and ask. So interesting note, which I also didn't know, and sort of found out after the fact, but Brendan was actually kind enough to give Chris and myself a little bit of a shout out in the liner notes, which I didn't know at the time when I first listened to it. But I think that's, like, personally for me, that's nice that you obviously to make enough of an impact on anyone that they would think enough of you to mention you is I guess flattering. But I guess the feeling's equally mutual. As I said, I do consider him a dear friend. So the fact that he's, in my opinion, sort of operating at the height of his powers, both with this and the Alters record, I'm very happy for him and always excited to see what he does. But I think, as far as displaying what convulsing is, this record for me really encapsulates that.
And a reminder to everybody that either slept on or hasn't gone back and listened to that Alters record in a while. Ascetic Reflection came out in 2022. phenomenal album. One of like in real cream of the crop stuff when it comes to a very buoyant Australian scene.
Yeah, and great live band too. So if you ever get the chance to see them, I know they do tour overseas. So if they're playing on something and you can go see them, definitely do that.
Yeah. Okay, what have you got for us next?
So number 3, this is another early year release, but again, it's one that sort of stuck with me throughout the year, and that's Noel As Spoken. So I don't know if you're across that one. I do not know that. Yeah. So,
Noel as in N-O-L?
Yeah, K-N-O-L-L.
Okay, K-N-O-L. K-N-O-L-L. Let's see.
So maybe a good way to describe this is imagine if like a death grind band was like channeling the vibe of Portal, like early Portal. So it is nominally death grind, but there's a lot of, has such a eerie, evil vibe to it, and that sense of chaos that you would get from those early Portal records. Even aesthetically with like that, the album cover and what have you. And I believe one of the members is, I don't know if Keith Merrow, it's his son. So there you go, Keith Merrow is old enough to have like an adult child. So and now I think about it, I'm like, so am I.
not a record that I paid any attention to, but I do see one red flag in the lineup. Ryan Cook on guitars and trumpet.
Yeah, but it's not. I wouldn't look at it as. I wouldn't look at it like you look at when you see saxophone on the.
Unless it's Ken Mode, saxophone is an instant. Don't listen. Don't pay attention.
There's definitely some elements of like power electronics and some sort of like avant-garde type touches, but I assure you that they're all used for evil and disgust. So it's like they're channeling again that vibe that you get from early Portal. Like where they had the imagery of like the old gramophone, like. It's meant to sound oppressive and horrifying, but they're doing it from. What's interesting is they're doing it from like more of a grindcore place, but it works really well. It's cool. It's something that I've not really heard before, and it's mean and nasty, so it appeals to all the things in that I tend to like in that.
Yeah, came out on the same day as well as the Vitriol record, January 26th. And released independently, so technically it falls into the category of unsanctioned filth, which is a fantastic naming convention for that, by the way. I mean, it's now fully deployed. I've got members of the Legion sending me stuff saying, check out this band, great nominee for the unsanctioned filth segment.
That's my contribution to the lore of Into the Necrosphere.
Love
it. I'll go to my grave satisfied if that's it. So.
Well, if that's what you're remembered for.
Just put it on my tombstone.
I hear a bit of racket in the background, by the way. Have you got poltergeist activity in your house?
Could either be my dog or that fan. I just turned the fan off.
Dingoes showing up and stuff like that.
But my dog does tend to clatter around too, particularly because it's warmer and down here is cooler, so he likes to come visit. So.
You also mentioned old gramophone, so I must ask, because obviously we spoke about it on the news rant. We then spoke about it subsequently offline. You finally took the plunge and got yourself a man's stereo. How's the hi-fi setup coming on?
Yeah, I did. So I think that was perfect for me. So thank you again for the advice. It really helped me to inform the decisions and options for the parts that are available using that as a bit of a template. But yeah, I love it. It really changed the way that I listen to stuff. I love the clarity of it. But those Wolfdale speakers are really warm as well. So for me, I want something where I'm listening to a record to sort of be like a very warm and organic experience, even though I'm listening to horrible music. But I don't really want anything to be cold and clinical where this really isn't. So, Now
you need that as well, because it's that warmth is quite forgiving when it comes to the kind of stuff that we listen to. If you listen to things that are cold and clinical, you end up with the treble sounding very shrill in my experience, and when it comes to certain black metal bands, it just makes it unlistenable.
Yeah, and I've started a small vinyl collection now too. But the vinyl is kind of more reserved. It's like the whiskey and cigars, so to speak, where essentially it's those albums that have stuck with me through life or have some closer significance. So I'm trying to keep it small, but most of everything else I can run off the streaming box. But that's when I want to really sort of sit down and go for a bit of a ride. That's reserved.
You want to give it a quality listen. I would assume top of the list would be Bros, their debut record Push. That would be one of
your that's records. I'll get around to ordering that one. I haven't quite got there yet.
What is your prized possession when it comes to your vinyl collection at this stage of the game?
So I've been sort of rapidly trying to acquire. So let me just have a look and see how I'm going. I've got things coming in all the time, but I've tried to keep that list small at the moment. So look, it's probably going to be, I've got both it'd have to be maybe one of the Acid Bath records on vinyl.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So you've got that.
Yeah. So as I said, I've kind of made the list small, because that way, if I have to scour the ends of the earth to find things, I can do that without like crushing my wallet. But if I have to track down something rare, then that would be it. Otherwise, maybe the other one potentially could be. I've also got the self-titled Crowbar record, which is another one that's kind of stuck with me for a long time.
Masterpiece.
Yeah. But we'll see. Yeah, as I said, there's all sorts of stuff in there like Godflesh, Street Cleaner, Killing Joke, self-titled, Immolation, Suffocation. So, we'll kind of build it up over time, but it'll just be those records that have had meaning and stayed having meaning.
When's your birthday?
15th of March. Am I doxing myself?
You are. What's your driver's license number? I might have to organize a little birthday present for you, because there was one title that you did not mention there that I think is essential for any self-respecting black metal man to have in a vinyl collection, purely because of how the record was recorded and sounds. But Hate Them by Darkthrone.
Okay.
I'm just scouring the ends of the earth now to see whether you can find it. I see Eric sell it. Might have to get you a little birthday present, mate.
Well, that would be very kind and very appreciated.
Yeah. Okay. What else have we got? We're now at, I know it's not numerically ordered, but you're number 4.
Next cab off the rank. So this is another record from friends, which is good, because it just means that my friends are putting out good records. But it's the latest Pestilential Shadows record, Devil's Hammer. I've followed Pestilential Shadows, I guess their career for a long time. We've been friends, I guess, Ballon and I have been friends for many, many years. And in fact, probably a lot of my formative opinions on black metal and what it should be and how it should be are probably in no small part to that friendship. So always been a band that have done things the right way, approached black metal the right way, treated it with the right level of conviction that it needs. And this is probably my favorite album of theirs since Depths. Reason being is just the lineup, but I feel like they're kind of at the peak of their powers. I mean, Ballon's always been a fantastic songwriter, really constructs things very, very well. But now he's had 30 odd years of doing it. I feel like the melody writing in it is really strong. It's not maybe as showy as something like Maguire, but It is very well crafted, but everything's delivered with a high level of conviction, and that comes through live. And I know in the process of recording it, I chatted to Pete, who plays guitar on the record and also did the recording for it, and he'd mentioned that the recording process was difficult, and I said, okay, well, that's interesting. Like, what made it difficult? And he said, well, normally, like, because he records a lot of stuff, I like to sort of work through and reamp and kind of get everything right in the studio, and use sample replacement to fix drums. And he's like, but I just wasn't allowed to. Everything had to be done the right way. Everything, if the guitar wasn't from an amp, it had to be done again. There's no shortcuts. And I think that attention. But he also then went, it was real, like it. So it was a process, because I couldn't use any of the tools I would normally use to like make my job easier, and that I would do for a normal record. But he went, in the end, it was the right decision to do, because you can feel the difference, and that's probably the thing I think that kicks it over the edge for me, is that you can feel the difference. And I know, speaking to Ballum as well, he had a chance to sort of do a few more things vocally, and add a few more layers too, which shows on the record. But if you ever see them live, that you'd never have any doubt everything's dialed into just punishing you and putting you in the zone. Like, this is black metal, fuck you, we don't care. You're not going to catch them goofing off or like doing, like, it's all business and everything's delivered the right way. It's like they have blood. It's not fake blood. It's like we have to do it. We have to suffer when we do it. And this record is really just an encapsulation of a long career of doing that, where it's just been refined into like an aged whiskey, right? It's improved itself to a point where it is like they're probably one of the best bands that we have in that field in Australia, in my view.
The S-tier bands in Australia, the cream of the crop, there's definitely there's a polish to what they do and how they deliver things. But when I say polish, I mean like it's a very sort of practiced. They like a well practiced sports team. When you see it, a sports team like let's say, for example, the Springboks, that are fitness is absolutely dialed in. Their plays are absolutely dialed in. I've always found this, and I've observed this of the very best of the best Australian bands. There's nothing sloppy about it. There's very few Australian bands that put out a fantastic album, and then when you see them live, it's just, this is a fucking complete mess. The guys as well, everyone I've ever come across, you included, there's a real focus to the way that you guys work, that again, you get a lot of very left-brained folks in this scene in particular, and you meet them and you talk to them and you go, I mean, this dude's life must be a complete fucking disaster. Somehow they've put out something good. But yeah, you guys are cut from a different cloth, mate. Just my observation. But as you're describing pestilential shadows, that's exactly what I was thinking as well. It's like this. Have I ever come across somebody from the Australian music scene that I go, this person, is putting out premium music, but how they get there, I have no idea. Just a comment on Devil's Hammer. Loved it. It was on my list. So my finalist list this year was the longest it's ever been. I went from having an overall to 2024 list. So I like this was a 3-tiered distilling. Normally what I do is every Friday, anything that looks interesting to me goes into a playlist marked 2024. And then I will go back and I'll listen to stuff and I'll start deleting over the course of time, things that I don't like. And then that is normally, I mean, this year I'd say was probably a good, 80, 90 records. Then I right before we went on holiday, I created one called 2024 Finalists. So who are all my favorite stuff? This year, 54 albums went into the finalist list, and then obviously I need to get it down to 30. And Pestilential Shadows was one of the bands that I really pained over, because it was like, in any other year, they should be on this list. didn't quite make it, but that doesn't really detract from the fact that it's a superb record. And I think you've described it very, very well. But I love it. I think this is a fantastic band. Anyone who hasn't paid attention to them needs to change that immediately. Would love to see them live, obviously, as well at some point.
Yeah, well, look out for that, because that might be a possibility. So I know that album came out on Northern Silence. So I know there'd been some, last time we sort of spoke, there was some discussions around, I guess, working with their booking agent. So Europe hopefully may be on the cards for them.
Awesome. All right. What next?
Okay, so the next one, this one might be a bit of a left field pick. So there's a band called Eternal Hunt, and the album's called An Era of Shame. And it's not
one that I think you've ever even sent to me, mate.
No, I probably need to sort myself out. I'll do that after this episode. But it's not about your internet browsing history. It's So the reason this one's good, they're a French black metal band, and I guess playing sort of a melodic style of black metal with elements of what you'd expect from sort of bands from that region. But I think what they do quite well and what tips this over the edge is, one, there's a lot of variety in the riff writing is really cool. But the second thing is the vocal delivery. So this is going to sound weird, so maybe stick with me on this one. But the vocalist has a style that is almost like Nurgle from Behemoth, but like good,
but not shite.
Yeah, but
let's just aggressive. Sorry to interrupt, but just to be clear, I have my thoughts on Nurgle's attitude towards the scene, and the fact that I think he's changed a little bit as the bloke that I met many years ago. But he is a great vocalist. There's no question about it.
Yeah, and look, I've seen them live, and they're a great band, so I understand why they got big. I'm just kind of half joking on that one, but I guess it's similar in tone. It's similar in sort of pitch and tone, but this guy's sort of just going full tilt and delivering super aggressively, and that it just seems to work because one, you don't hear that sort of style all the time mixed with that kind of music, but two, just you can almost tell that he's about to put the microphone stand through the wall, possibly while still attached to it. So the conviction of it is what really carries through and takes a record that would be pretty good, in and of itself, and kind of just tips it over the edge into being something a bit unique and actually refreshing to listen to. And I think, look, that's a little bit of a problem with, I don't want to say it's a common problem with black metal today, but there's a lot of it that kind of sits in a bucket where you know what you're going to get and you've kind of heard it before, and how well it's executed or not is really the deciding factor of whether you enjoy it. But when you hear something, you're like, oh, I haven't heard it done in that way before. It tends to stick out. So this was one of those, and it's not one that I'd never heard them before. So to be able to do that and impress these sort of jaded ears is I feel noteworthy.
This year, I really have to say I developed an intense distaste for emotionally charged, overly emotionally charged black metal. At the very far end of the spectrum, the worst example of that to me, wouldn't even really call these guys black metal, but Harakiri for the Sky kind of stuff. There's it's verging on emo, and the people in the band also look like they're from from emo bands. I very, very much, and people will see this as I go through my list, I very much moved towards just bands that sound gruffer, nastier. And even bands that I previously liked, who put out records, and not even previously liked, I still like, but who put out records this year that kind of went too far down that particular route. I just found myself just not wanting to, I had no desire to listen to it. I don't mind experimental. I don't mind people doing different stuff, but I definitely feel like there's there's a lot of different flavors of black metal, but if I had to break it down into two main strains, one of the main strains is this emotional stuff that really is for people that are on forums where they carefully and painstakingly dissect the history of every single band just to make sure that at some point they weren't ever on stage with someone that knew someone in Deathspell Omega. And then there's the strain of music that I think I like, or certainly I like, and I know you like, and that's the nastier stuff. And part of what set me down that conversation, if anyone wants to go back and watch that episode, the conversation I had with my man from Horned Almighty, Bjorn, when we were talking about that, I was already kind of thinking about it, and I was sort of distilling some of my thoughts over the course of the conversation. But yeah, I just don't. There's so much good music that comes out, and we all have so little time to really dig into great stuff. I just don't have room and capacity or interest to listen to that style of black metal anymore. Sniveling. I mean, it's the modern era's equivalent of the blokes that used to, walk ponderously by the lakeside and, cry, and, every single fucking song is about sorrow and this, that, and the other. The entire subgenre of depressive black metal, to me, again, is an outgrowth of that. And it's just an outgrowth that I don't really respect. I certainly philosophically do not respect in any way at all. And musically, it just sounds tepid to me. It sounds like a bunch of fucking weak geeks doing something that they really ought not be doing. They should be making a different style of music, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's funny you mention that. I actually end up going to Harakiri for the Sky show, and coincidentally, just because Austere were playing on the same bill, and I've known those guys for a long time and wanted to catch up with them. So, but there's a difference between the two, and I guess they're maybe operating in a similar vein. But I had this conversation with, I had this conversation with some friends of mine. I said, look, the difference is that the Austere guys were black metal guys, like through and through. They came up and did it all the old school way, and now they've kind of switched it into a different context, but it's still coming from a black metal place. Yeah. And then I think Harakiri for the Sky played, and I heard one song and left, and someone's like, "Oh, you got to stick around." I'm like, I don't need to hear this. But the difference is, and I don't know their history, but to me, it sounds like people have come from outside who are trying to play, like use the bits of that type of music to, I guess, like make their way in the world. But it's not. It's coming from a different place, as you say. It's not coming from the same place, and the energy's different. And I think, like, that's the bit that sticks out.
Yeah, the ethos, the energy, culturally, philosophically. Again, the word. I mean, we can beat on not agriculture, on Harakiri for the Sky as much as we want, but actually, I've just given the game away, because the band that's foremost in my mind of the ones that truly need to face the firing squad is agriculture. That to me was like, that's the worst example of those types of people going into the scene. And I frankly, again, I have conflicting thoughts about gatekeeping. I think ultimately everyone should be, is entitled to do whatever they want. I'm not entitled to like it. And when I heard that fucking trash, it was like, this doesn't belong in the scene. It should be called black metal. To call it ecstatic black metal, it's just not. In the 90s, you would have gotten the fucking shit beaten out of you for that.
Yeah, and I think gatekeeping is one of those things that has a positive and a negative aspect to it, and really how good or bad it is depends on where it's falling in the line. But the way I look at it, it's like, why do museums and art galleries exist, right? It's like people take care of things and they want to preserve stuff that they've put time and effort into and have reverence for. Now imagine if someone just went into a museum, just ripped a painting off the wall and went and like exploited it for money with no real love for what they were doing. It's like, well, it's the same thing. So like, if you're going to take, yes, that's fine, you can take something from somewhere, but what are you giving back in return? Like, what have you given back in return? And you go, look, music for everyone, and it's like, yeah, it is. But if you use things that other people have put time and effort into, and blood and sweat and tears into it, and then you just come pick what you want and not show any respect for not show any respect for it. It's like, you've got to imagine that people are going to probably, security is going to stop you at the door and kick you out. So in that respect, like, gatekeeping is good as far as like quality control and making sure that people are looking after the thing that they're that they're operating in. But yeah, of course it can be negative when you're like not letting people, I think where people are trying to find their way and they don't know what they don't know, and they're willing to find out, when people are being elitist and going, well, I'm not going to explain to you why, I'm not going to explain to you anything you oppose or whatever. I'm not going to help you out. Okay, that's a negative. It's like, if people are willing to do the time and do the research and get involved in the right way, then it's on you to help them. If you're looking down your nose at them, that's negative gatekeeping. But if whatever Sleep Token want to wander in and pinch black metal's aesthetic and then use it to flog records, well, fuck them. Like. You should get gate kept. So
I've got the headline for the clip I'll release, or for this episode though. Gatekeeping is quality control. That's you should do a grind band and have that as the album title. Gatekeeping is quality control. Yeah. All right, what have you got for us next?
So the next one is Deathlike Mass, the Lord of Flies. Look, I'll just put it out there. Cult Testicles, love everything they do. That guy's got the ultimate goblin voice. It makes me happy. He's delightfully evil, and he takes great glee in cackling to the moon. So you mix that with Lucifer, and you've got a recipe for magic. And this record did not disappoint. So it combines all the best things that you love about those two things being together. There's definitely a goblin in the foreground, invocating to Satan and casting hexes and slaying poses, as a wise man once said, and then musical backing by Lucifer. So enjoy getting punished with a bit of orthodox black metal, with just a devilish ghoul officiating proceedings, and there's a lot of joy in that and wickedness at the same time, and I appreciate the combination of the two. I think sometimes like records can be, we know like people being raspy and evil or aggressive, but I think there's almost like there's something really uplifting when you get that. Uplifting's maybe the wrong word, but when someone is like wickedly and gleefully being cruel and evil in their music, there's something cool about that. And werewolves kind of do it too, right? Because, and Jugoth and I were talking about this the other day, they do the death metal thing, there's death metal lyrics, but there's like this cruel humor in it, like they're having a good time while they're telling you to fuck off, which in some ways we think is probably uniquely an Australian thing, but like there's definitely fine glimpses of it in other music, and I think this taps a little bit of that in a probably a less crude way than werewolves, but in a similar vein. It's like, have a shit time, but also we're kind of laughing. We're taking delight in making you uncomfortable.
Yeah, you're sort of winking at the audience midway through, and then you're just going straight back to doing what you were doing previously. Great record. I completely agree with you. Another one of the finalists that didn't quite make it onto my top 30, but that's not because it's a record that is subpar. It is fucking brilliant. And exactly the kind of black metal that I think should be produced in 2024 and 2025 and beyond. All right, next on the list.
The next one is Dodsmagerd, Omniverse Consciousness. So I guess this is a bit of a side venture of Dodheimsgard, featuring as a Vicotnik and I think their live guitarist. I really enjoyed the Black Medium Current. I thought that was a fantastic album, but I think, as I said to you at the time, it was like the best Pink Floyd record I've ever heard. So it was good, but it was definitely, I think, probably the progressiveness came at the expense of the aggression and the black metal. And I think what this record does is takes what people enjoyed about Black Medium Current and kind of re-injects a bit of that a little bit of the aggression and the black metal back into it, with a little bit of, I guess, an electronic edge that you might have got from the things like Supervillain, Outcast, as well. So it's they've taken some old things and some new things and mixed them together, and I think it's kind of almost like a best of multiple eras scenario. For me, it just works. It gives me all those elements that I liked of the various pieces of them and puts them into a slightly new package. And I guess doing it with a stripped down personnel too. So obviously very creative and very talented people. So depending on, if you are a Dot Holmes Guard fan and you found that the last record was a little bit too sedate in its pace for you, this will probably give you that extra fix that you were looking for.
Yeah, I definitely would agree. It kind of reminds me in some passages of that period in 90s black metal where a lot of the bands started to get really experimental. Or guys who were in more orthodox black metal bands were going into doing stuff like, Arcturus's La Masquerade and Infernal. It has that bent to it, but reworked, repackaged, and kind of brought into the modern era. Another one of the finalists that didn't quite make it, but again, I really, really enjoyed it. I never quite got into Black Medium Current, and both you and Marco were adamant that it was great. I've tried to listen to it. I know I need to spend proper time listening to it, but it's just one of those things where I don't have the time to listen to it at the moment. And there always seems to be other stuff that catches my attention first. And then I also go through these periods where, we still haven't done it. We're overdue to do, myself and the two Mikes, Mike Scondato and Mike Hill, we're due to do our Thrash crossover 666 countdown. But I went through a long period last year where I was just listening to fucking Sarcophago, Slaughter, just old school thrash stuff and just completely ODing on it. So, this particular album possibly didn't make it into the top 30 for that very reason. I didn't spend enough time listening to it, but it is excellent. 2 thumbs up without a shadow of a doubt. And I like the fact that they were experimental. They retained a lot of the zaniness of Black Medium Current, but added a bit of muscle to it as well.
Yeah, totally agree. It'll be interesting to see where they go, or if they keep the two things separate. But Vycotnik's definitely got no shortage of releases and projects that he's involved in. So how he sort of splits his time will be interesting.
Okay, I think we are down now to the final 4 for you. I've kind of lost count a little.
I think 3. So 3.
All right.
8. Yeah.
All right. What's next?
So the next one is Diabolic Oath, Oracular Hexations. So I guess this is like probably I would sit this in a sort of war metal, death metal type bucket, which is often a genre I struggle with to a degree, only for the sake of, sometimes it's like brutal for the sake of being brutal, but it's that thing about being pummeled. Like if you're being pummeled constantly and you've never had any experience of anything different, then it just feels normal. But if people give you a hiding and then stop for a second and then go back and resume doing it, now you know what it feels like to not feel like that. And like having those dynamics and that songwriting is something that often can get lost, I feel. And actually some of those bands would be more brutal if they incorporated a bit of that. So Diabolic Oath are an interesting one in that they sort of play in that style, but if you sort of take note, the guy's playing like a fretless bass and like there's actually some technical skill in it. So there's some skill in knowing what you're doing and doing stuff in a really calculated and musical way, but using it to basically sound very thuggish and caveman-like. And I think it's the dichotomy between those two things that makes this record work. It's like smart people playing dumb, but like Norm Macdonald, that was his brilliance, right? Is that he was super, super smart, but when he spoke to you, he just acted like he was an idiot. But meanwhile, he's 4 steps ahead of you. This is kind of like a musical version of that in like a war metal, brutal death metal type format. So there's a lot of cool stuff happening if you're listening intently. The songwriting's there. There are some dynamics there to help make the thing sound heavier. And I think this is maybe one that people sleep on as well. But this was a recommendation from Brendan from Convulsing, so he was right on the money.
I really enjoyed their debut album, Profane Death Exodus, that came out in 2020. One thing I was thinking about also as you're talking about this album, 2 bands from Portland, Oregon that you highlighted there. And certainly if you live in Portland, Oregon, you have plenty to be angry about. So that's that's potentially where some of that rage, some of that brutality comes from. But great band. I did sleep a little bit on this one, for sure. Something that I'm going to have to get back to. But superb outfit. Okay, what have we got next, young man?
All right, the next one is maybe my second pick out of that sort of dissonant technical death stuff. This is the Devenial Verdict album, Blessing of Despair. Big fan of the first one, and as you know, I sent it over and went, "Yep, check this out." But Blessing of Despair blows Ashblind out of the water, far and away. It's combining that sort of atmospheric stuff that you'd enjoy out of Ulcerate, but it's a bit more muscular as well. So I think the death metal quotient of it is coming from a lot more of a old school death metal place, but I guess playing in that realm. And there's even some, I guess I would say, like almost like 80s Guitar Hero type lead work in there. And not necessarily in the note choices, but just like the sound, like the lead tone that they're using. Almost you would hear in like an 80s stadium thing. But I think this also ties back into it having more of an old school place where it's coming from. And the other thing I really liked on this one, and I think even was a step up from the previous record, is the vocal performance, which kind of in parts of it really kind of hailed back to like early era David Vincent, and I appreciated that. I really like Covenant, Domination sort of era, Morbid Angel. I like the earlier stuff too, but those are kind of the formative albums where I really kind of got into them. So having vocals that were in parts reminiscent of that, also again called out to really kind of connected with me, and I think where it beat, maybe the Ulcerate record, because that was another one that was in the list here. It's just like it was a lot more song based, and because it had that sort of old school death metal vibe, the things that they were doing stuck better than being sort of an atmospheric experience that is just, it's there, and you couldn't necessarily call out the individual parts as well. All these songs had a lot of character and individuality, so the sum of the parts were just as good as the whole.
Yeah, I had Sebastian and Riku, the vocalist, on Into the Necrosphere back on episode 164, which came out on Valentine's Day in 2023 for anybody that wants to go back and check that out. But I loved Ashblind, and completely agree with you. This is a fantastic sophomore effort. Great to see them do that. I'm not surprised about the Morbid Angel influences that we heard, because if you go back and listen to that interview, we spoke at length about Morbid Angel. They're all very, very big fans. Riku is an incredibly capable vocalist, and I'm very surprised he has not been asked to be in a ton more bands. Because he's when it comes to that style of vocaling, I personally think he's certainly a contender for the top 10 active vocalists working today. Also agree with you on the Ulcerate comparisons. That was very prevalent with Ashblind. It's definitely still there, but as you say, adds a bit more testosterone to the mix as well. but top-notch band and top-notch guys as well. All right. So your final pick, and am I to assume that this is your favorite album? Like, do you have a definitive favorite for 2024?
Yeah, this is where I always struggle with putting. I can give you a top 10, but I can't necessarily order them. And just the reason is that these are the albums. The reason that these make the top 10 is because after I've listened to them, I continue to go back to them for something. So. And they continue to stick with me because I mean I listen to a lot of albums anyway. Because one, I'm searching, for stuff for the label. Two, like I run that weekly playlist. So I'm always digging around. I hear a lot of music, but often there'll be stuff that I enjoy, but I just don't go back to it for whatever reason. It's like I can see on paper all the bits are there. It's fantastic. It sounds good. All the performances are perfect, but I just never want to pick it up and go back and listen to it. So that's normally how I get to this list anyway. It's like, what is the stuff that I kept going back to? But the times I go back to it differ, and that's why it's really hard to pick up like an order. It's like on any given day, I could want to pick up any one of these records, but it just depends at like where my head's at. So. And I think it takes some of the competition out of it. It's like, look, these are just albums that you should go and check out, full stop.
I think you're absolutely correct on the criteria. For me, it's the same thing. It's like, what do I go back to repeatedly? What did I go back to the most? Spotify Wrapped helps you a little bit with that, but, not so much for the albums that come out later in the year. And I think the other key thing for me is, what am I likely to keep listening to beyond this annual cycle? My especially my top 5-6 picks of the last couple of years, there would have been a little bit of change there. If I gone back now, the previous Eclipse record, for example, would have probably been number 1 of that year. I think it was number 4 or number 5 in the year that it came out. But that being said, the previous Antichrist Imperium album that was number 1 the year that it came out would still be number 1. Primordial was number 1 last year for me, would still be number 1. Ruim, again, the Ruim Primordial battle for supremacy rages on because those are both albums that I have repeatedly listened to this year. Even though we're now in a new cycle, there's new music coming out, etc. But that's definitely my thinking when it comes to putting my list together as well. What have I enjoyed most? What am I likely to continue enjoying? What will I go back to? In years to come. But on that note, what have we got
number
as
one?
Your final pick?
The number one that's not really number one. So the last record on the list is a band called Couch Slut. And the album's called You Could Do It Tonight. Couch Slut, an interesting band. And I think you might actually, if you haven't heard this record, I think you might enjoy it. Just because it's kind of in that vein of like noisy hardcore, almost like Ken Mode noise rock type stuff. And it's female fronted, which but there's no clean singing. Definitely, it's like I believe the singers perhaps live quite a wild life, so a lot of the lyrics are very sort of autobiographical, and they're just fucked up. Like and you feel the tension in them because, like in one song, she's telling a story about like basically getting fired from a job or something when her and a friend were like stealing stuff and then running off and going to like make this home movie and then getting baked and then dressing, then some guy comes in and he's cut his arm down to the bone, he's bleeding everywhere, and like they're all having like there's just wild stories. And it's very manic, it's very harrowing, but it's also very raucous, like you would get with something like a Ken Mode. So I appreciate the aggression of it. I appreciate that it is unhinged. I feel like it's probably maybe not good to have lived the life that this lady's lived.
That has generated these kinds of stories.
Yeah, but I think look, there's a thing definitely with hardcore that sometimes metal can lack too. Is an intensity, and I think I think when metal does intensity well, it does it fantastically. But hardcore or anything that's sort of related to hardcore, it tends to do that more naturally as a byproduct at times. But I think when you add that with, like, you know, this isn't like straight edge tough guy type stuff. Again, it is more, I guess, noise rock kind of, yeah. So it is just more aggressive and unhinged and more intense, and it feels like it. So it's a very uncomfortable listen, but I like being uncomfortable. So
yeah.
Maybe that's why I like getting hit in the face and like strangling people in my spare time. But being under pressure and uncomfortable doesn't feel unnatural to me. It feels like you should be challenged, and like it's not for everyone. And like that's how things should be. Like if this music was super accessible to everyone, I think it would lose something. So I like it when people are happy to be sort of a bit dangerous and unhinged and put it all out there. So this record does that well, and I appreciate it. And I think the stories aren't things you're going to hear anyone else write lyrics about, because they're obviously things that happened, and they're pretty wild. Like, yeah, you kind of can't make that stuff up. So
they've had over the course of their career some pretty unique touring partners as well. I mean, in 2022 they went out with Imperial Triumphant and with Cloak. It's kind of a band that I think a lot of people struggle to place. They don't quite necessarily know who they fit with, and so they end up being one of those bands that you can take on tour, with a variety of projects or a variety of bands, and people will be into them. Not one I've spent a huge amount of time listening to, I must confess, but upon your recommendation, sir, I will change that. So thank you very much for that contribution. Insightful as always. And again, interestingly, none of the bands that you mentioned are, except for one, are in my top 30. But I love that, and that's why I always invite you on, because you always bring in new stuff that I was like, I didn't check that out, or I didn't spend enough time listening to that. Let's do a quick musical interlude, and it's going to be gentleman's choice on what song that'll be, and then we'll be right back with my numbers 30 to 21. So, what shall we play the Legion?
Oh, good question. Now I have to go think of a track. What's one that they would like? Let's do one of the Devenial Verdict ones, I think. I didn't keep a track list handy with me. But I think if I was to pick one, let's go Devenial Verdict. I'm just trying to find the track list now. Moonstarved.
All right, so that was Devenial Verdict off their album Blessing of Despair, as featured on Nathan's Top 10 Albums of 2024. The song is called Moonstarved. The label that released that was Transcending Obscurity Records. Album dropped October the 3rd, 2024. Well done to those guys. And again, top-notch dudes as well as being fantastic musicians. Finland had a hell of a year. I'd say second to the US, which surprisingly enough is the most prolific on my top 30 this year. I think the next country in line actually was Finland, and I'm going to double check that. We have no less than on my top 30 6 Finnish entries. Paling in comparison though to the US, which for the first time ever has no less than 11 bands that made it onto my top 30, and kind of rounding out the geographical analysis. Third in line is Australia with 3. Then we've got the UK with 2, Norway with 2, and then we've got one-offs by Canada, Denmark, Italy, the Netherlands, New Zealand, and Portugal. And I'm sure people can probably start to suss who might fit those categories. But as I said earlier, what a absolutely astounding year. And we start the top 30 with the first band you mentioned when we went down your list, Vitriol, Suffer and Become, put out by Century Media on January the 26th. Fantastic album, and probably the hardest one for me to decide as far as who made it onto the list and who didn't. But deserved victors. When I sent you my list originally, I had Atrabilis on there, and it's so close. I mean, I listened to those 2 records back to back for probably the best part of the last week of my holiday, like trying to think, okay, who's going to do it? And as you know, at number 99, I made yet another change. But at number 30, Vitriol, Suffer and Become. At number 29, Deceased, Children of the Morgue, put up by Hell's Headbangers on August the 30th. I did, in my view, one of my very best episodes ever. Certainly one of the best episodes of the year, with King Fowley of Deceased on the podcast last year. And Deceased was a band I've known for a very long time. Got familiar with them through Death Is Just the Beginning, went back, checked out, the albums that everybody loves, Luck of the Corpse, The Blueprints for Madness, Fearless Undead Machines. Children of the Morgue was one, like I hadn't spent a huge amount of time listening to some of the more recent Deceased records, but Children of the Morgue really just tickled me in the right way. There's a real love for old school heavy metal on this record, but it is still done with the appropriate amount of roughness and toughness to keep it interesting. And again, for a band who've been around for as long as these guys have been, the fact that King Fowley is 56 years old, he still sounds sensational, and the band still sound vital. They I wouldn't say they sound like young men. You can hear that it's seasoned veterans doing this, but they still sound like they've got an appetite for it. They've got a real taste to do this. And I personally think it's one of the best albums that they've done in a very long time. Maybe in upwards of a decade and a half. Just absolutely loved it. Was it one that you spent any time listening to? I did send you these in advance, so obviously I expect you to be fully aware of all of them and having studied them in advance of this episode.
So it's not one I've spent a lot of time with, but again, I guess the joy of these types of conversations is that I'll get notes from the things that have resonated with you and go, I need to go back and revisit that. And sometimes that's the fun of it, is picking up the things that you've missed your attention span for one reason or another. But I did have a listen to some of it and I enjoyed it, but I think, again, it's just one that kind of passed me by a little bit. But I'll definitely go back and check it out now. But what I was going to say, that interview with King Foley, he seems like a no bullshit kind of guy, and which is very refreshing. And I think he's kind of a lifer in that regard.
100%,
and doesn't need to kiss anyone's ass to do anything, and isn't going to. So that's to be respected anyway. But I think the thing that kind of shone through in that interview is that, as you say, even at that age, that he's still full of enthusiasm and love for the music and what they do. and that really shines through. And I think it's probably not a surprise then that the record reflects that energy and that vitality. As you said, like it may show that they're seasoned veterans, and you're not talking about 18-year-olds running around, but it's still possessing that same enthusiasm and that same spirit, just with the tempering of being a bit older and wiser. But the love for it is not tempered.
And that is absolutely essential to a band being able to put out records in the twilight of their career that still sound this good. And there's not a lot of bands that can do that. It's an interesting element of this game that I think about a lot, and I've observed a lot, and I've spoken to a lot of people on the podcast about, is like, that spark that still keeps you hungry and that still makes you want to do this kind of music. Because with a lot of folks, they run out of ideas, or they run out of tricks to show us, I'd say probably in their early to mid 30s. And then you end up with a band like Slayer that just, keep on putting out a record where, like I've said before, in my opinion, if you take every single album from Diabolus and Musica through to Repentless, you could probably, at a stretch, pull together one great album from the best songs of those records. It is mostly filler, and there's probably on every album one, maybe two tracks that you go, okay, this is very, very good. So for a band like Deceased to be doing that, or to be operating at this level, at this point in their career, I tip my hat to them. There is no, magic formula to eternal youth, but they're one of the few bands that have still managed to retain their essence and still managed to sound, to sound noteworthy at this point in their career. Only thing I disagreed with King Fowley on, I know he's basing this on personal opinion, but I gotta love me some Testament. When he was railing on Testament there, I bit my tongue, because it was like, that band is near and dear to me. And you talk about a band that has kept up the intensity and kept up the quality at a very late stage in their career. I mean, fucking hell, they're one of the best ever in my opinion. But yeah, anyway, so there you go. Deceased, Children of the Morgue, number 29. And just final comment on that King Fowley interviewed. I've had this a couple of times, but more so than any others I've ever done in 255 episodes. I finished that conversation and I sat here quietly for about 10 minutes thinking, how the fuck am I ever going to top that? It's like, it was just wild.
I'll throw a spicy take at you, maybe. So I'm a fan of Testament as well, as far as like a lot of those old thrash bands are concerned. To me, they're probably one of the best ones, if not the best. Listening to early Testament stuff, I go, you know what? You could have been in the spot Metallica were in if it weren't for some bad luck with record labels and what have you. I'm like, they have a very similar sound like early on, but I actually think Testament's output shits all over Metallica's.
I agree. I completely agree.
And I don't just mean obviously the classic. I mean the totality of their catalog. Like, as you say, now they're still putting out good records. Metallica, I don't think it's put out a good record since like Ride the Lightning. Was that the one before?
Don't quite agree with you there. I love Master of Puppets and I love And Justice for All.
Do I get it mixed? What was the one before Black? Was it Master of Puppets? I get Ride the Lightning. Justice for All. The production lets it down. That's the only thing I can't.
Yeah, it does, but it's still a very, very good record. But I do agree with you. If you look at the expanse of Testament's work, there's no question that they have more great songs. Just in numerical value, they've got a higher volume of excellent tracks versus basically anybody in the Big Four. There's no doubt about that in my mind. I mean, for me, even the records regarded as lesser Testament, like Demonic is a fucking great album. The Gathering is a phenomenal record. So anyway, we can go on about that forever. I am manifesting that this is the year I get Chuck Billy on this podcast. I don't know how I'm going to do it. I will fly to the US to speak to him, but I am going to do it without a doubt. All right, at number 28, we have the first of several Finnish entrants onto the list, Nightside, Death from the North, released through Purity of Fire, featuring the great Jerry Koronen, aka Rauta, another guy who did a fantastic episode with me last year. Death from the North, of course, follows up The End of Christianity, which they put out all the way back in 2001. But fucking hell, what a potent, fiery exercise in old school satanic black metal. He sent me the album quite significantly ahead of its release, and from the second I heard it, I was all over it. Loved it. Exactly the kind of aesthetic, the sound, the approach. There's a bit of that Finnish atmosphere just to keep the record from sounding monotonous, but it is fire and fury throughout, and I am absolutely on board for that style of black metal, particularly this year, and I think that they did it really, really well, and great that they have returned to the fray as well.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of this record too, and it was like a reluctant cut. So
yeah,
if you gave me a longer list, it would definitely be on there. And I guess like for people who don't know, Jerry is a real one. It's like when we're setting up the label and we're sending things out to people, and people don't know who you are and don't need to respond to your emails or give you the time of day. Like Jerry, for his channel, he, similar to you, it's fully independent. He does not give a fuck. Like he's not interested in what label you're from. He's interested in talking to you if you've got stuff to send, and he's not going to pull his punches. And I remember like he was he was happy to respond to emails in the very Finnish way that Finnish people do stuff. He explained how it's going to work, which was very fair and even-handed. And when he reviews stuff, he's very fair and even-handed, and it's funny. I kind of sent a note to him just to say, look, I actually think this is good that you give, you don't like all our releases and you give people tough reviews. One, because you're talking to your taste, but two, like for these bands who are just starting and sort of doing their first record, getting a review that's not necessarily all positive, but Jerry's always gives details as to why. It's not like, the riffs suck. He goes into why he's not a fan of it. So he gives you useful information, and sometimes just not to his taste, but like that's instructive for bands versus low quality stuff. So, but there's no fear or favor, and I think that's the thing about him that I actually, and same with you, I appreciate that you can't really be brought or sold. You're going to say what you're going to say, and he's a cool guy to talk to. Like he's happy to respond to emails and chat. So a lot of time for Jerry. And this album as well. And it's interesting. He's got a very laconic style of vocals. Like he almost sounds like he's relaxing a bit. This is kind of a weird thing to say. They almost sound kind of relaxed, but it works really well for the, like, in combination with the music on this album. I know before I say I like things to be super forceful and up front. His is almost like a bit more restrained, but it actually works really well for what he's doing there. I think on the other band he had, the Annihilus, that style doesn't necessarily mesh so well for my taste. But for this, perfect. Really great album, and I enjoyed it. So as I said, very reluctant cut.
He really is the real deal, and if people keep their eyes peeled, him, myself, I don't want to let too much out of the bag, but he, Cheyenne, and I are going to be doing something pretty interesting very soon. I think it's not been done, as far as I know, it's not been done on a podcast for a while, certainly not in our scene. So watch this space. But yeah, great dude, great band. And as I said, it's killer to see that, if it actually adds more credibility to your reviews if you're willing to go out and demonstrate that you can do it at the very highest level yourself. That there's something to that, I think. Okay, number 27. Heathen Deity, Satan's Kingdom, put out on Cult Never Dies on November the 30th. Again, something I had well in advance of it being released. I liked True English Black Metal that they put out in 2021, their long gestating debut. But I think that Satan's Kingdom takes a very, very large and smelly dump on that particular album. It is way catchier, way better written. The songs are much, much more memorable. Heathen Deity are going to do what they do, which is, very, very naked, blatant, old school second wave worship. But on this particular record, I think they found much more of a distinct voice in which to do that with. And as I said, I think the magic of this album is very much in the songwriting. The record, or the song that we premiered on the show, "Fucking Worthless," is a standout. But then, again, you kind of, when I first heard that single, I was like, okay, well, this is probably going to be the standout. I wonder what the rest of the record sounds like. But then you go through it, and every single song is just a fucking banger. Absolute banger. So if you like that style of black metal and you haven't yet listened to Satan's Kingdom, make sure you change that fucking post-haste.
Yeah, and I think just on that, the album, I think, was the lead single off that "Fucking Worthless."
Yes, it was.
Yeah. Again, what a way to set the tone on things. Like, just nice and mean, just going to tell you how things are going to go. But on the flip side of that, almost, the interview that you did with, was it Dagon and Azrael? I think what was nice there, I guess, maybe in a more heartwarming sense, is obviously Azrael talking through his health struggles and the things that he went through, which was horrible. But I think what was nice to watch was the friendship between those two guys, and I guess the level of care that they had for each other, and that only comes from having a long partnership and one that's rooted in friendship. And I think sometimes, look, I know that our music is all about being confrontational and all the rest, but I guess on the flip side of that, outside of the art itself and the music itself, a lot of it is built on the connections that you make with people. And I guess, that one just came across as being particularly genuine and heartfelt. So maybe I'm getting sentimental in my old age, but, that was nice to see. And it was nice that they delivered an album that was the complete opposite of that at the same time.
Yeah, nothing wrong with getting sentimental, mate. And I completely agree with you. I mean, that's a friendship, as far as I know, that stretches, certainly 3+, possibly 4 decades. So yeah, it was nice to see those guys. It was nice having them on the news rant period. It's always fun talking to them. But it was nice to see that level of affection for each other, and certainly I hope Azrael is doing well. I didn't realize the extent of just how severe his health problems were. I knew obviously that he had taken a step back because of it, but there's certain things that I don't necessarily feel comfortable asking people about too much or prying in too much. So I just knew that he had taken a step back. Didn't know the details, but when he started sharing on the news rant, it was like, holy fuck, man, that was. I can't imagine how fucking terrifying that must be.
Yeah, it would have been. I can't really imagine it. But I mean that the fact that he can open up about it and reflect on it, and I guess the fact that he probably has friends around like Dagon, that kind of I guess gives you a bit of and family as well to sort of keep. It helps, and it helps with the recovery and to get back on your feet. And it's obvious, you've got people around you that do have your best interests at heart. So. Yeah.
Okay, number 26, Oranssi Pazuzu, Montutauja, I think is how I pronounce the name of the album. This was always going to have to be on the top 30. It did go into various different tiers at various different slots on the top 30. Eventually landed on 26. Put out on October the 11th by Nuclear Blast. It is exactly what you'd expect from Oranssi Pazuzu, which is exactly what you wouldn't expect from Oranssi Pazuzu in the weirdest way. Like, I think one of my proudest moments of 2024 was being the first to uncover the Death Grips influence on this record, which I think our man Onto was also quite surprised that I picked it up. But it stands out very, very, very clearly. It adds an additional level of complexity to what this band does. But what I love is that they have still not, and seemingly never will, get away from the fact that at the core of everything that they do, between all the experimentation and all the avant-garde and all the craziness, has to be great, memorable songs. And they delivered 8 superb songs here, including a track in track 4 of this record, which I listening to it almost feels like if you sample that and go back in time to 1993, it could have been a Cypress Hill song. It could have been a song of Temples of Boom. I sent it to a friend of mine and said, like, does this remind you of Temples of Boom? And he was like, 100%. And again, I love the fact that they did that. I love the fact that they did what at its core is a black metal song, essentially based off of a throwback to a 1993 hip hop sample. Great band, and I love how creatively and artistically brave they are. I think their attitude to music is fucking awesome, and it's they're also very Finnish, which I love.
I think this is a band I might need to get some recommendations off you for. I have listened to them, I have heard them, and I know lots of people that I'm friends with also like this record, but and I've always like appreciated them, but it's just, I don't know, it's just something that I've never really got onto the right wavelength with. But I'll listen to it and enjoy it, but I just, so this album, to be honest, is one that I didn't really spend any time with, so I'm happy to go back and revisit that, because that sounds quite interesting to me. And as I said, I've not disliked them, but it's just hasn't sort of stuck with me. So
to paraphrase how you've said I should spend time listening to Dodheim's God, it is something it's a sit down record that you experience end to end. I would say the two I would strongly recommend you try out: Mester and Kinsey, the previous record they put out in 2020. And this new one, get yourself a decent pair of cans, sit down and close your eyes and listen to it. It's very much a journey. This is not a band that you can just listen to a single song and then go, yeah, great, and then move on to the next thing. It requires concentration. It requires diligence, but it pays off in spades. Okay, for number 25, we move to your part of the world. A band that I believe in spirit embodies almost everything that I love about Australian extreme music. Their album was called Indomitable, and they are, of course, Destructor, putting out Indomitable on Hell's Headbangers Records on October the 18th, 2024. This album is uncompromisingly violent, nasty, aggressive, but you know what I was talking about, that really like slick, polished athleticism. I think that's right. Australian athleticism, I think, is what I'm going to coin there. They've got that in fucking spades. Somebody sent it to me on the podcast before I actually heard the record, and they were like, yeah, this is man's metal. No question about it. I mean, this is fucking seriously. This is man's music. This is not for wimps. If you're going to be, if you the kind of guy that went to the Anathema concert and stood in front of the band crying, it's not going to be for you.
Not at all. Yeah, look, Destructor have been around for a long time, so they're old hands at it. And yeah, just tough, no bullshit. They're not there to give you anything flowery. You are going to get pummeled. Actually, Chris, our guitarist, and I can't remember which member it is. They're writing buddies together. So
okay,
a little bit of 6 degrees of separation in there, but but they've always been cool guys as well. So again, it's good that people sort of pay attention to those bands that have been doing it for a long time and have honed their craft. And there is a certain thing that Australia brings. I will agree. All the bands might sound different.
But Australian athleticism. Let's call it that.
Yeah. The Australian horse meat. It's don't drug test us. We'll piss hot.
Yeah. But yeah, absolutely fantastic album, fantastic band. Right, next, a recommendation courtesy of the great Brandon Legion of Horrorwolf 666 podcast. He got this one to me reasonably late in the year, but from the second I heard it, I fucking loved it. So number 24, Deathless Void, The Voluptuous Fire of Sin, released officially on September the 20th on Iron Bonehead Productions. The first album by these guys. I am not sure, but I think they're Young Bucks as well. Because looking at the details for the band members on Metal Archives, their drummer, for example, is only 30 years old. He's been in a couple of other bands, including Weltschmerz and Wrang. but most of the other dudes seem like they're pretty young. But another a band that combines dissonant death metal with nasty black metal, does it in a way that sounds unique, fresh, interesting. It is a very relentless, uncompromising album, and it is 38 minutes that fucking people really need to pay attention to if they haven't done already.
I've totally missed that album, so I was just checking my Bandcamp to see whether I'd grabbed that one, and I hadn't. So
very surprising, because that is right up your street. No question about it.
And sometimes it's just that, like, as I said, I'm reading through so many albums for so many different things. It's just like, I don't know, there might be, if the cover doesn't catch your eye, or like there's so much stuff to troll through, you just miss things when you're going there. So this is why these conversations are actually always super fulfilling to do, and always a pleasure to be on, to find those things that have fallen between the cracks. So I'll definitely get onto that.
I agree. I mean, this is the reason you do these countdowns. It's a celebration, but it's also a way to it's a way to give credit to the bands that deserve it. And it's, again, especially the fact that I take real I take real fucking umbrage with the bigger websites and podcasts and stuff like that, including bands that it feels to me like they're getting paid to promote at the expense of bands that really deserve it in the scene. It's a way to get that to people's attention, but it's also a way, for dudes like us to find out what we missed. So hopefully a couple of people are filling in the blanks on their wish lists as we speak. At number 23, we've got, out of Norway, Horsemenen with Den Frede Makt, released on Territorial Possessions on May the 31st. Horsemenen are a band that unsurprisingly featured on many people's best of lists for 2024. My view, they have been on a very, very steady climb since they put out their first album in 2017. I loved their previous record, The Winds of Wrath. I think that Den Frede Makt is a step up from that in terms of songwriting, production, delivery. The whole package feels to me like they are starting to enter elite tier status. And, especially as some of the older bands potentially scale back their public presence, I think Horsemenen is one of the bands that, will fill that void.
Yeah, look, great band. Not too much to add there. I think you've summed up pretty well. I think the spot for me, as far as like that style of thing, and I guess probably semi related as well, as that Nigel Draper's album. I think that one maybe stole a little bit of the spotlight for me, but
might be one I talk about a little later. let's put it this way: Spellgoth had a hell of a year as far as albums that he appeared on, and potentially how prolific he is on my top 30. He's almost as prolific on my top 30 as he is on subreddit forums about sus black metal. Okay, at number 22, Veilburner, The Duality of Decapitation and Wisdom, released by Transcending Obscurity on November the 15th. I fucking love this band. Again, in a different way to Oranzi Pazuzu, but similar principle. I love how creatively experimental these guys are and how brave they are, but once again, they still understand at its core, and we spoke about this when I had them on the podcast, at its core, it still has to be about the song. The song still has to be memorable, and in their case in particular, they still inject a lot of beef into the sound. I thought Veilburner, their 2022 album, was a masterpiece. Lurkers in the Capsule of Skull that they put out in 2021 was almost better. But The Duality of Decapitation and Wisdom, fantastic. And if you haven't checked out the episode that I did with Mephisto and with Grism, one of the really fun things to talk to these dudes about is the concepts that go through these albums, because I mean it's fucking mind-boggling. I wouldn't even say it's not even a story as much as it is weird, esoteric, philosophical stuff that, like, it's not often I find myself struggling to keep up with someone in a conversation, but I'm like, I'm trying to sort of process what this dude is telling me, and it's like, okay, where does this all fit in? It's as mind-bending as the music. But yeah, a phenomenal band, a treasure of the underground, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, great band. I really like Veilburner as well, and just the stuff that they come up with musically, but I guess also like the aesthetics and some of the visuals they come up with too are really interesting and creative, and not as you say, not the things that you would see all the time. And they seem to be together like on a very similar wavelength of what they're channeling, and I think given how off the wall it is. It's such like there's so many universes where those two would have never connected. But the fact that they have is like, what's the chances someone's going to be in that same weird little wavelength that you're running, and you just happen to find that person? Like that band could just as easily not happen, but I think we're all the better off for it that it has for whatever set of circumstances. But really really great band.
That's a great point you raised. They are, when you talk to them, they are really very evidently simpatico in the way that they think, their philosophy on music. There's a great synergy, I think, in the way that they operate where, I think Mephisto writes music that speaks to the ideas and these fucking wild concepts that Chrism brings to the table. A great meeting of two extremely creative minds. All right, which brings us to number 21. I was very surprised by this band, but it was one that I discovered on the news rant. And from memory, as soon as I heard them, they received an instant top notch. The band is out of California in the US. Otherworld put out their album Tenebris on Deborah Morty Productions on August the 30th. Fantastic atmospheric black metal. Atmospheric black metal that doesn't sound weak, has loads and loads of different influences, everything from swans. There's even some Killing Joke that you hear in there from time to time, but it's presented in this thick wall of sound that just absorbs you from the first track and kind of keeps your attention, for the entirety. And it's an album that, you always know that you are onto something great, at least I do, when, it's Friday, it's New Music Day, and I'm like, this might be the 6th or the 7th time today that I've listened to this album. Like, you just keep wanting to go back to the beginning and start it from scratch. Phenomenal fucking record.
Yeah, this is one that I missed out on as well, so let's go straight on the list of things that I need to listen to this weekend, so I'll be playing some catch-up.
Also, fun fact, their new logo that they unveiled in 2022 was done by the great Christoph Spagel, who did the Into the Necrosphere logo. That in itself makes them a band worth listening to. But yeah, great band. And there you go, guys. My number 30 down to 21 of 2024. Who made the top 20? Find out next week. Dude, thank you very, very much. As always, what a blast having you on the podcast. We will be doing, I think, many more news rants this year. It is so much fun doing those with you, so we would definitely want to do more of those. Just a quick question before you go. Gutter Prince Cabal, we've kind of touched on it a little bit. What have you guys got in the pipeline for 2025?
Yeah, so our release schedules already for 2025 was already full in 2024. So I think we'll see our first batch of releases sort of coming mid-year. We've got two sort of coming out at once, including our first hardcore record, which should be fun. And also, I'm not sure you might have seen social media, but we're doing, a friend of ours is running a music festival, which he started last year down in Canberra, called Essence Festival. And he wanted to turn that into more of a bigger long weekend event because it's a long weekend. So he's asked the label to curate a Friday night, intro to the festival type gig. So cool. We've got that to plan as well. And try and sort of focus on Australia and sort of New Zealand and Asia and that area that we specialize in. So pulling together a lineup for that. We'll have, I think we've got 4 or 5 releases coming out this year. So yeah, we're very busy.
Who are all playing on that Essence Festival, aside from Gutter Prince Cabal bands?
So I don't know that the lineup's been announced just yet, but usually it's sort of a bit of a mix of, sort of like dark electronic stuff, like metal related stuff. So it's all more, I guess, the fringe types of music. So it's a bit more of a mixed event than like just a strict metal festival. But I do believe
I'm just mulling about on their Instagram right now, and yeah, as you say, they do quite a lot of different stuff from what I can tell. Shamefully, they've also promoted Ailstorm. You could maybe have a conversation with them about that and say that's
might be a different Essence festival. Yeah, I don't
no, this is just the. I think this is the. Is this the same promoter? I don't know. I'll reserve the complete lambasting of Ailstorm promotion once I've fully investigated it. But
I was like, that's definitely not in the wheelhouse of Dan at all. I can't imagine a world where he would have Ailstorm.
No, what a fucking absolutely dreadful band that is. But yeah, no, that sounds very, very good. And looking forward, of course, to hearing more stuff from Prince Cabal, and hopefully we'll do a couple of premieres on the Sphere, mate. Anytime you guys want to roll out something on the podcast, more than happy to do that.
Yeah, for sure. So we'll definitely do that. And yeah, anytime you want me to jump in, I'm ready and willing to go. So
badass.
Yeah, always open. Dude. And as I said, they'll once the Graveir record's in a fit state, you'll probably be one of the first people to hear it. But I've also got, if everything goes well, I'll probably have 3 other records coming out sometime this year or early next year. So I'll have a few things in the pipeline.
I would assume that includes a bit of Longing More potentially. What else have you got?
So I've got a further Longing More full length, which is in the works. I'm working on another project with Mitch, who used to play guitar in Graveir, and Chris, which is a bit more of a thing I'm mixing myself, a little bit more weird sort of black metal type stuff, a bit more of a death metal and electronic bent. And I've got that sort of black metal hardcore record that I was working on. It's basically just waiting for the final mixing. So yeah, I'll be a busy boy.
Exciting times, mate. Well, dude, what a great way to get 2025 kicked off on Into the Necrosphere. Thank you very much for coming on the podcast, as always, and look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Thanks, Jackie.
Ash, Teeth, and Bone is the name of the song that you just heard. The band is Otherworld out of the US. The album Tenebrous, number 21 on my top 30 of 2024, released by Deborah Morty Productions on the 30th of August. Absolutely fantastic. Congratulations to Otherworld and to every band featured on the definitive countdown of the best albums of 2024. I'll be back next week with part 2. I will be joined by the Duke of Metal, Dave Berardi, as well as the Sinister Minister, Carl Hikara of the Soul Knox podcast. They're going to give me their top 10s. I'm going to give you my numbers 20 to 11. And then for the top 10, as per usual, the Sensei, Mike Hill of Tombs, Scorpion Throne, as well as the host of the Everything Went Black and Necromaniacs podcasts will join me. And we will put a cap on what has been an absolutely extraordinary year for extreme music. Right now, my friends, if your name is Tim Lambesis, you need to head over to the nearest toilet, stick your head down it, and pull the chain until you can breathe no more right after you've hit the bricks, because this is my weekly news rant.
Round them up for judgment. And hang them where the world can see.
All right, Legion, the first news rant for 2025, so I feel under some degree of pressure to make it a good one. Thank you very much to everybody who sent me messages saying that you missed me and that you wanted me back. And also, I received a whole load of messages from the Legion towards the back end of the year, wishing me a great holiday, saying thank you for for the entertainment in 2024. And I just wanted to say I really appreciated that. And I'm glad to be back. I'm not so keen to be back in the UK. I must confess. The weather sucks. The service is atrocious. All of the annoyances of daily life come flooding over you when you've been away for 2 weeks, living the good life. But the one thing that I am very happy to return to is into the Necrosphere and the Legion. So we've got a lot to catch up on. The first headline grabbing my attention over on metalstorm.net, which is where we kick off the news rant as always. Kryptan unleash the Miracle Inside track. The Swedes Kryptan have launched a music video for The Miracle Inside, the second single of their forthcoming debut full-length Violence Our Power. The latter drops on February the 14th on Edged Circle Productions. Interesting to see a song entitled The Miracle Inside being promoted by Black Metal Promotions. It sounds to me, on the face of it, like Kryptan might be playing Striper's game. But I am reminded, actually, that Kryptan feature 2 members of October Tide. And October Tide, of course, being the Swedish kind of death doom band. Not really a band I'm a huge fan of. I just happen to know that 2 guys from the band, including the vocalist, went and did this side project. So curious to hear what this sounds like. The first single flew by me. I have no idea what I'm about to let myself into or let you guys into, but we're going to find out very shortly. You could definitely hear that the gentlemen involved in producing this they're not new to the game. And Alexander Hogbaum, the vocalist, he was, or as I mentioned earlier, he was the vocalist in October Tide. Still is, as far as I know. He also did vocals for Centinex, Demonical, Spasmodic, and Volturion. Spasmodic and Volturion I don't really know, but Centinex I do know, Demonical I do know. Vocally, great performance by him on this track. I think the production is very solid. It's nice and beefy. The riffing, it lacks a bit of originality. It's good, and on its face, I enjoy the song, but I would say this is not something that I've not heard done by many, many other bands. And interestingly, even though these guys are from Sweden, there's a very, very strong Norwegian influence in the music here. Alexander actually reminds me a little bit of the vocals on the last Nadinger album. And of course, you guys know I think Nadinger is one of the best black metal bands on the face of the earth. He definitely reminds me a little bit of Captain Estrella Graza, who did vocals on The High Heat That Licks Against Heaven, which, if you've not heard that album in a while, do yourself a favor and revisit it immediately. It is fantastic. But this would get a thumbs up, cautious thumbs up, though. I'm not completely blown away, but I definitely think there's enough here to merit paying attention to the album when it gets released. Let's give it another 60 seconds. Really nice use of those multi-tracked vocals. I mean, they're probably using like 3 or 4 different layers of vocals to get that sound. And then a nice throwback as well to the early 90s with that keyboard. So the song actually gets better as it goes on. I mean, we've only listened to 2.5 minutes, but there is a definite step up in quality, at least or I should say in appeal, as the track progresses. So I stick with my original verdict. Thumbs up to Kryptan. All right, moving on. We've got a new track by Imperial Triumphant. I'm going to give that one a skip because I think we've given them enough of an opportunity on the news rant, and they have disappointed me more times than they've impressed me. We also have Bleeth, which why on earth you would call your band Bleeth, I have no idea. We've got Udo Dirkschneider, who's premiering a re-recorded version of Balls to the Wall. I want to listen to this. I'm curious. I think it's because of its place in the Darren Aronofsky movie The Wrestler, which I absolutely loved. But I really like the song Balls to the Wall. I think it's fantastic. So not necessarily a song I would have suggested requires re-recording, but it says here, as part of his Balls to the Wall Reloaded full-length, Udo Dirkschneider presents a re-recorded version of Balls to the Wall featuring Sabaton's Joachim Broden. That opening riff on the original is all kinds of manly. So I have a fondness for it. I know it's it's not necessarily Grim Cult or Necro, but I do want to hear this because, like I said, I'm very, very curious to hear what he's done with it. The original vocal performance that Udo did was perfect. Didn't need to be fucked with. Certainly didn't need Joachim Broden messing it up, sounding like a fucking douche. So, yeah, not, as I said, not a song that required re-recording. Now I would suggest that the re-recording is actually... It's punishable by 6 lashes with a cane, with a Singapore cane. All right. Next up, we've got Dawn of Ouroboros. Now, I actually, at this point, can't recall whether the interview was still recording when I said mean things about this band to Nathan earlier. Either way, I've been pretty open with my view on Dawn of Ouroboros. So if you've listened to this podcast, or if you stick around, or you're one who sticks around for the news rant, which means you're a real one, as they say, then you know that I don't care much for this band. But I am a man of open mind, so I'm happy to give them another crack and see whether they can change my mind. I highly doubt that they will, but one of my biggest gripes with Dawn of Ouroboros is that they are a band who are comprised principally of people with a lot of talent. Kylie Calling, which is the side project that most of the people from Dawn of Ouroboros participate in. I can't even remember all of their names. Hold on, I'm just going to check. So it features Tony Thomas and Chelsea Murphy. Chelsea Murphy is the vocalist. She's also the vocalist for Dawn of Ouroboros, and obviously Tony Thomas. And then Yuri Kononov, he plays drums on Kylie Calling, but he's not in this band. But either way, between Tony and Chelsea, they have oodles of talent. And yet somehow, with this band, everything that they have produced to date has been unlistenable shit, particularly their most recent output. But, like I said, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and give them another try. It says, atmospheric black metal, Dawn of Ouroboros have revealed the official music video for the title track of the band's upcoming new album, Bioluminescence. That effort will be released on March the 7th. The band commented, the ocean has always been a major inspiration for us as a band, but this song is the first where we've directly composed something about it. Particularly, it's about the chemical process found in many deep-sea animals called bioluminescence. We wanted the title track to be an introduction to the more adventurous vibe of the overall album. None of that sounds black metal to me, but that being said, to create something that pushed ourselves into a more progressive area of our creativity, while still maintaining the emotional intensity and melodic sensibilities that represents the qualities of our music that are so important to us as a band. All of that really is a red flag when it comes right down to it. But lest I start my rant about this too early or potentially prematurely when the song is very good, let me shut up. Let's hear what it sounds like. Holy shit, that is fucking dreadful. I don't need to hear the rest of the song. The major chords, in my view, have no place in black metal. And then we get to this Melanie Martinez shit that I've just heard now. So, no, absolute 0 out of 10, total shite, not for me. Might be for others, in which case, bully for you. I doubt very much any of the Legion would enjoy it. Kylie Calling was very, very good. That album that they put out on Debra Morty back in 2022, Dreams of Fragmentation, was excellent. The single that came out afterwards, Glittering Delusion, was made by someone who was delusional in putting it out. It truly was total shite. But as I said, it's not like these guys lack talent. Chelsea is actually a very, very good vocalist, clean singing, and her extreme vocals are superb. And Tony is very capable. Even in that short 30 seconds, which was as much as I could endure and as much as I could endure putting the Legion through, the production sounds good. But this is just not for me. I'll confess as well, I have a bit of a bone to pick with them. And this is a bone that I have to pick with a couple of bands who've been on the podcast over the course of my 255 episodes. When I had them on, I mean, Khalid Calling, no one knows who they are. I bet a ton of you listening to this have never heard of them. I had them on because I like their music. I thought, and as I've said many times before, part of this, or the purpose of this podcast, is to act as a vehicle for me to promote bands I like, and hopefully get a couple of folks noticed who, otherwise wouldn't be. My platform isn't huge. I'm not, Lex Friedman, but, at least have, a reasonable listenership, a couple of thousand people that download the podcast every single month. So, I have an opportunity to take a band I like that no one really knows and, give them a bit of shine. What pisses me off no end is when a band that has next to no public profile then doesn't share on their socials the episode that I put out, which was the case with Khalid Calling. And I made a hard and fast rule around about that time. Any band that does that again, like any small band, never again will they appear on this podcast. Never. I don't give a shit if I think they're the best band on the face of the earth. Because they're not entering into this in the spirit of doing it. In the spirit that I'm doing it, I want to promote and grow and I guess inject a degree of vitality into the underground in my own small way. But if you're not gonna return the favor, then there's absolutely no point in me having you on the podcast, other than to have a conversation with you. And did I enjoy the conversation with them? Yeah, it was all right. But it would be different if it were a band, like if it's a higher profile band. That's a different dynamic. Those bands I have more to gain by having those bands on the podcast than they do, talking to, little old me. But conversely, if Mayhem could share an episode or could share the links to an episode on their socials, Paradise Lost could do it, then fucking Kylie's Calling sure as fuck could have done it. So anyways, that's just a little side rant, but it explains why they'll never be on this podcast again, and why some of the bands that have were on this podcast in the early days in particular, who I've never heard from again until they're about to release a new album, and then I get told, I'd really like to book a slot on your show. Fuck off. There's no booking slots on anything. I've got a bunch of other smaller underground bands that genuinely do go out of their way to help the podcast, promote the episodes. I'd have them on every fucking week for the rest of this podcast, and thus my natural existence, before I have any of those guys on again. So, anyways, now on to bigger profile fare. Scour are streaming a new single entitled Blades. I have seen some of the hardest working lieutenants in the Legion already pre-order this record on Bandcamp and implore Scour and Phil Anselmo to come on the show. I don't know whether we're going to be able to make that happen, but if we can, I'm going to be a very happy man. I know you guys are going to be too. It says here, Scour, the black metal supergroup featuring Philip H. Anselmo of Down and Pantera. It says here ex-Pantera, but I mean, they're still touring. Derek Engerman of Cast the Stone, Cattle Decapitation. John Jarvis of Agoraphobic Nosebleed and Pig Destroyer, he's been on the podcast. Mark Kloppel and Adam Jarvis have revealed a new single titled Blades. You can stream the track below now. More details on their upcoming debut album Gold, as well as music video for the first single Infusorium, can be found over here. I didn't actually react to Infusorium on the podcast because I like the song so much. I just played it on an episode at the very back end of last year. Fucking brilliant. And uniformly across the ranks of the horsemen of the podcasting apocalypse, we are all buzzing about this upcoming record. I'm not going to pretend that I've not listened to the song multiple times either, but for those of you guys that haven't, I do need to give you guys a little taste. So this is what it sounds like.
Evil involvement.
magnificent. That is really the only way to properly describe this magnificence. Black metal magnificence. There's a lot of people that in between popping their pimples and shopping for secondhand Mysticum t-shirts on eBay, will look down their nose at Scour and go, "Oh, Phil Anselmo." And of course, you've got the fucking unemployed Antifa types that'll, go on the Metal Sucks forum and say, we shouldn't be supporting a man like that. But fuck all those people. I think this is absolutely fantastic. And I think the interesting thing to me about Scour is all of the previous releases that they put out, all those EPs, brilliant. There's one song in particular, I have played it on the podcast, I think more than once. It's called Bleak. If you need something to convince you that Scour is an excellent band and worth your time, go to YouTube, search for Bleak by Scour. You will not be disappointed. That being said, you shouldn't have been disappointed by what you just heard. I think this band embody the spirit of true black metal more so than an awful lot of people that come from that scene. Looking at a man like Ishon, I would listen to Scour for the rest of my life without listening to anything else ever again if I had to choose between that and anything that Ishon put out beyond Nine Equilibrium. So that includes Prometheus, which is also a load of overrated shit. This is just, it's nasty, it's relentless, it's menacing. I think Phil's vocals sound brilliant. The production is solid. It's beefy, but it doesn't sound overproduced. And I think all of the other performances, everyone, is just on top of their game. I love the fact, too, that Phil, as we speak, is out on the road opening for the biggest metal band on the face of the earth, Metallica, with Pantera, also one of the biggest bands on the face of the earth, even though, obviously, it's not the original lineup, blah, blah, blah. But he goes out and he does something like this. I think that's very, very cool. I think what would be even cooler is if on an upcoming Pantera reunion tour, they get the Scour boys together and Phil pulls double duties. Or, at the very least, maybe you do a Scour set with another vocalist. Give this style of music some shine. But I mean, it'd be interesting to see whether or not there's any uptake of Scour from maybe some folks that'll go and watch a Pantera show that wouldn't necessarily will gravitate towards this kind of music. Anyway, let's move on. Pestilence part ways with guitarist Rutger van Noordenberg. I'm not going to bother reading the article. I can only assume he's had his fill of Patrick Mameli, as have we all. Old Mameli, definitely. I saw some exchanges while I was away on holiday between him and a couple of folks. So actually, I don't even think they were exchanges, because I think much like all of his posts on the social media, he limits the comments. So he goes out, posts something completely ridiculous. This time, I think it was once again a defense of AI album art, and people made commented about it, on various things that I saw. But this dude definitely seems to me like he is set out to wreck his reputation and piss on the legacy of his band as much as he possibly can. Very, very interestingly, though, I'm just looking at Metal Archives, that levels of perception abortion that they put out last year. Take a guess what its average review is on Metal Archives. Out of 16 reviews, if you guessed 10%, you would be wrong, because it is lower than that. It is actually 6%. It should be 0%, but, let's say, at least in principle, the riffs of some of those songs are very good. Because the sad thing is, Consuming Impulse, Testimony of the Ancients, Spheres. I love Spheres, even though it's, it wasn't the most popular album when it came out, but I love it. I think it's grown old very gracefully as well. Resurrection Macabre is fucking excellent. Doctrine is superb. Obsidio is fucking brilliant. Hadeon, very good as well. So yeah, a band with, I think, so much consistency, and it just seems like Mameli as a human being is just not the kind of dude I would get on with. And clearly many people who work with him don't get on with him either. I know that Nick Sagias, who's a top-notch man and a guy whose bands you should definitely check out if you don't know them. Tribe of Pazuzu is one of his bands. I don't think that they actually are on Spotify anymore. And actually, I'm not even sure if they're going to be on Bandcamp for very much longer. I've seen him post a bunch of stuff on the socials about that. But Tribe of Pazuzu, they've got 2 EPs, Heretical Uprising, King of All Demons, and then an album called Blasphemous Prophecies. Brilliant. He's been on the podcast, played many things, by the band on the show. He's also got another, more grind, punky kind of band, Nihilist Death Cult, which I really, really like. But, he, don't get him started on Mameli. So he'll spend 45 minutes chewing your ear off about what a complete and utter cunt that guy is. Anyways, let's move on. In the Woods debut a new single. It says here, Norwegian avant-garde metal band In the Woods premiere a video clip called A Presentation of I, which serves as the first single from their forthcoming 7th studio album, Otra, to be released on April the 11th, 2025 through Prophecy Productions. Let's give it a spin. I think when it comes to In the Woods, you need to divorce yourself from any comparisons you might want to draw, any recollections you have of hearing their first 2 albums, Heart of the Ages and Omnio, because, those are black metal albums that go all the way back to 1995. Heart of the Ages in particular, relatively seminal when it comes to Norwegian black metal. And then things changed for the band. Let's put it that way. No longer do they have any other founding members in the band, save for their drummer Anders Kobro. Bjernt Fellestad, who's the vocalist there, he's only been on 2 albums, Diversum, the record that they put out in 2022, and then this new one. This doesn't sound. I wouldn't even say this sounds like Strange in Stereo era In the Woods. This actually sounds like Amorphous. If it were an Amorphous song, and you may be wondering why I gave it a full 2 minutes of airtime if I clearly don't like it, I actually don't hate it. If this were an Amorphous song, I would think it's not too bad. It's not something that I'm gonna listen to on a regular basis, I should say. But it falls into that category of, if it were if somebody played this in the background, I wouldn't object. It wouldn't be something that I would go turn that off before I take your fucking record player and make you eat the power supply. So yeah, that's about the nicest thing I can say. I would say Prophecy Productions, very interesting label to me. Like they seem to sign a lot of bands that on paper are superb, and then they always release records that you kind of go, what is that? Was that it? So yeah. That's again, we could talk about that in a great amount of detail, but I don't see anyone who was a fan of the original In the Woods hearing that song and going, this is brilliant. So we'll leave it at that. Exodus have parted ways with Steve Zetro Souza. They reunited with Rob Dukes. Interesting, because it felt to me like that was really it was very abrupt, that change. So I don't know if there's some sort of scandal just waiting to be leaked to the slobbering readership of Metal Sucks or Metal Injection. But either way, Rob Dukes being back, in my view, is actually not a bad thing. I really liked particularly Shovel-Headed Kill Machine by Exodus. That was, in my view, the very best that Rob Duke sounded with the band. Like, if you go back and listen to that album, it's a aggressive, it's an album that kind of has as much modern influence as it does does a throwback to the old school, and he sounded superb on that. I found that the Atrocity Exhibition, Exhibit A, and then Exhibit B, I found both of those were a little bloated. The songs were a bit too long. The albums, got a little dull, a little boring. But Shovel-Headed Kill Machine was fucking excellent. And if that's what the direction that they go back to on the next album, I'm on board for it, without a doubt. But like I said, I'm still curious to know why exactly Zetro is left. There was no explanation given, as far as I know. It was basically just, he's left the band. Rob is back. So good that they mended fences with Rob, for them as much as anything else. I mean, I know there was some hurt feelings there for a period of time, but it seems like they've managed to mend fences. Whatever it was, they've managed to get over it. It's a sad thing that, I shouldn't say it's a sad thing. It's a wish of mine. It's a hope of mine that Anthrax do exactly the same with John Bush. No more Poodle Belladonna. John Bush back where he belongs. Carpathian Forest touring the UK and Ireland in March. It's time that Carpathian Forest actually go out and record a new album rather than waste their time with tours. And live, they are a truly abysmal band. I saw them at Incineration in 2019. One of the most disappointing things I've ever seen in my entire life. I mean, it really was fucking awful. So yeah, I'm not excited about any time that they play live. I shan't be going there to see them play. Grima have launched a brand new track called Flight of the Silver Storm. Siberian atmospheric black metal representatives Grima have unveiled a brand new single and video, Flight of the Silver Storm. The song is part of their upcoming long player, Nightside, which is set to hit the streets on February the 28th on Napalm Records. Grima says about the new single, Flight of the Silver Storm is a sorrowful legend meant to warn those who have lost their fear of nature's dangers, believing they have unraveled all its mysteries and conquered it to a degree where it does not represent danger any longer. Blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to bother reading the rest of it. Interesting to me that they are referred to as a Siberian atmospheric black metal band when they're from Russia. I mean, I know we're quibbling semantics here, but does it strike anyone else as interesting that they're no longer being called Russian atmospheric black metal representatives? Anyway, let's set that aside. That previous Grima single that they released was fantastic, so I'm expecting the same from this one. All right, there's a word for that, shite. Skull Gatherers, the last single, was catchy. It was interesting. It sounded unique. Interestingly, on the sequencing on this record, this song comes right before Skull Gatherers, and it's the third track on the album. I mean, this sounds to me like something you would put later on the record, in the sense that it takes so long to properly get started. It's exceptionally, that first minute plus of intro, it's just plodding, boring as fuck. And then when the actual song gets started, it's not much better. It's a little bit more interesting, a little bit more palatable, but it's certainly not. It's really surprising. I'm sorry. I know I'm stuttering and stammering here like a fool, but it's quite surprising how much weaker this is to that first single, because I raved about that. As a matter of fact, I think that earned a top notch. It might even have earned a beyond top notch, if memory serves me correctly. This only earns a I don't know, used toilet paper. Maybe that could be our denomination, our rating mechanism for this kind of music. But yeah, I don't like this at all. I think it's garbage, and it has very very much dampened my expectation and excitement for the upcoming album. Revenge have posted a new track. Many of you guys were very strongly or it differed very strongly from me in your views of that previous Revenge single. I didn't like it very much, but many of you guys did and told me so, which I like. This is everybody's opinion is welcome here. But your insistence, or at least your passion for the last Revenge single, has motivated me to, at the very least, give them another try. So we'll listen to the new single. It says here, Flashpoint Heretic, in brackets, Flame Throne, is another new preview track from Revenge's soon-to-be-released long player, Violation Strife Abominate. And it has surfaced online. The new outing comes out on January the 31st. Let's give it a spin. Sangre Sani posts in the comments under this article the perfect example of how people who don't listen to metal music imagine metal music. Kudos to you, Sangre Sani. You are absolutely correct. I didn't like the previous single. I like that one even less. Moving on, Neon Nightmare digitally released Black Wolf Triarchy song. Not going to listen to that. I don't think I've spoken much about Neon Nightmare on this podcast, but I don't support the idea of I don't care how loving the tribute is, but anybody that is trying to sound like Typo Negative, stop what you're doing. No one's interested in hearing it. At least no one I want to be mates with. There is only one Typo Negative. There will always only ever be one Typo Negative. There certainly only will ever be one Pete Steele. So, unfortunately, he's passed away. We're never going to hear any new Typo. And I don't want anybody to even try and attempt to make music that sounds like it. So, out of principle, I will never listen to Neon Nightmare. However, one band I will listen to, who I fucking love, is Spiritworld. They have put out a new track. It says here, Las Vegas, Nevada-based quintet Spiritworld have debuted a Todd Hailstone-directed music video for Abilene Grime, the newest preview tune from their next full-length effort, Eldorado, which comes out on March the 21st, 2025. Death Western, I've raved about on this podcast many times. If you have still not listened to it, you need to line that up straight after you finish this episode of the podcast. But that being said, let's hear what Abilene Grime sounds like. All right, full disclosure, I've heard this whole song many, many times. You guys need to hear this next break, so we're gonna listen to the whole thing. But I love that opening bit as well. The first time I heard it, I was like, this is quite different for them. They've always had the Western thing, and it's obviously especially on Death Western, but yeah, this is almost verging on psychobilly with a little hint of metal thrown in. But the more I listened to it, the more it grew on me. And then in the context of what you're going to hear on the next minute and a half, I just think it's genius. So hold whatever you're thinking and just listen to the next bit that's coming now. Ten out of 10. This is instantly the album I am most looking forward to in 2025. And I'm going to try my very best to get Stu Folsom on this podcast. He was on the Lamb Goat podcast maybe a year ago, 2 years ago, and it got 84 views. Like on YouTube, this isn't the biggest show, but I could fucking fart into a microphone for 2 hours and I'd get more than 84 views. I have no idea how you fuck it up with a band like this to that spectacular degree. But if Stu Folsom does hear this, he has a open an open invitation to come on the podcast at any point that he wishes. But I'm going to try and make it happen. They're on Century Media, so I happen to know that the very best of the best takes care of PR for Century Media. So hopefully she can make things happen. But yeah, I don't know if you guys are going to agree with me on this. I know this is probably for a select taste. I was talking to the Duke of Metal about it on Instagram, and we both agreed after originally hearing it that it's a bit of a grower, but it has certainly grown on me. I love that transition from the psychobilly into kind of Slayer light, but it's kind of got this scumbag, this low-life swagger to it as well. Really groovy, really aggressive, like quite manly, the way music should sound. And I love the music video as well. If you're in a band and you've got the money, I would say you give old Todd Hailstone a hit, because he did a fucking spectacular job with this music video. All of their music videos have been very, very good as well. The ones they released for Death Western, I thought hit it out of the park. But for this one, man, it's fucking awesome. And that song as well, top notch, no question. Definitely, like I mentioned, the album that I'm looking forward to most in 2025. All right, let's see if there's maybe one more, and then we'll head over to Blabbermouth. One or two things I want to touch on there. One of them including scumbag Tim Lambesis. But yeah, let's see if there's one more song to listen to. I see that Septic Flesh have dropped a new music video for Psycho History, but that song was on their previous record, and I think when their previous record came out in 2022. Why the fuck would you release a music video 3 years late? I don't agree with that. Anyway, right. Doesn't seem like there's any new songs straight away, so let's head over to Blabbermouth and see what they've got on there. Opeth's Frederick Ackerson as a unit were stronger than ever. That last Opeth album to me really was one of the most disappointing things I've heard in a while. I did give it a proper listen while we were away. I don't like it. I think that, the few bits of death metal vocal that's included in it, it's pretty cool. But if I want to hear Opeth at their finest with death metal vocals, I've got 5 magnificent albums in their first 5 albums that I can go back and listen to. There's no need for me to listen to this new stuff. There's just still too much of the progressive shit on there. I don't like prog rock. I think that a lot of my favorite musicians unfortunately seem to have this fucking obsession with prog, and as far as I'm concerned, it should just go away. It's been the ruination of some great bands, including Opeth, and actually, if we're perfectly frank, based on the last Akrokaka album, including Akrokaka. I mean, you cannot possibly compare Renaissance and Extremis to Words Ago Unspoken, Corazon, and the Goat of Mendes, and say that they're on equal footing. I know I've spoken about that many times before, but it bears repeating in the context of me expressing my distaste for and my hatred of progressive rock. As soon as somebody starts saying King Crimson and Yes really influenced this new album, then I'm like, either you're going through a fucking midlife crisis, or you're just no longer into the heavy stuff, into the real deal, the stuff I listen to. You are not going to hear Spellgoth say, King Crimson really influenced this new Horn album, and if he does, I'm going to be looking at the horizon for the fourth horseman of the apocalypse, and not the podcasting apocalypse. But speaking of disappointments in 2024. I was actually pondering doing a special segment about this while I was away. I'm trying to think, who would I regard, or what records would I regard as major disappointments in 2024? And certainly Opeth is on that list. I would say the new Deicide is on that list as well. But Deicide, for me, disappointment is baked into the cake with that band, because they're like a Metallica, or like many other bands that I grew up with. that I will always root for. So whenever news comes my way of a new record coming out, I'm automatically excited, because in my heart of hearts, I want Deicide to make another Legion. I want them to make an album that's as good as Once Upon the Cross, or I mean, the first album will never be equaled, but the first album, even Serpents of the Light, I would take. But Banished by Sin has one, maybe two decent songs on. It's an album I try desperately to like, but it's kind of like all of the stuff that they've done since Till Death Do Us Part. Like, I'm a big enough Deicide fan that I even actually have a bit of a soft spot for Till Death Do Us Part. But To Hell With God, In the Minds of Evil, Overtures of Blasphemy, and now Banished by Sin, they all have the same problem. There's 2 songs on it that's good, and everything else is, it's not bad, but when you consider the caliber of songwriter that is Steve Ashim and what this band has done previously, it just doesn't compare. The new Graveir, I also thought was incredibly disappointing. For a band who I have championed for quite a while and have said, they're going to be one of the biggest bands in black metal, I genuinely saw them as the true successors to Behemoth, and I don't see that anymore. What I see is an awful lot of indifference from a lot of people who used to be fans of theirs. I see some new fans, but I certainly see a lot of people that were fans of Limbo and fans of the first records, now getting to this new album and just going, they've jumped the shark when it comes to too much polish, too much show, too little go. So I was very disappointed by that. Trying to think what else. I'm pretty sure I could very easily round out a list of at least 10 or so albums that I thought didn't quite cut the mustard, but those are probably the first ones that come to mind. If I think of any others, I'll mention those too. But yeah, new Opeth, just bring it full circle back to the headline that got me thinking about that to begin with. Yeah, it doesn't cut it. And, I know it's appeared on a ton of, best of 2024 lists. But I still, as I said to Nathan, I personally think, might not be the case in Opeth's situation, but I still think that there is money that gets passed around from labels to, websites, podcasts, whatnot. Because there's no other reason why so many of the same bands should always appear at the top of that list. When there's so much great music that comes out in the space of a year, why is it that when Mastodon puts out a record, even if it's as fucking dreadful as that hushed and grim garbage that they put out previously, like it's guaranteed it's going to be at the top of the list. Same with Lamb of God. They're a good band. I like their music, but their last album is a complete and utter insult to their legacy. Total shit. Still top of the list for so many people. I don't get it. Either those writers or those podcasters just don't really pay attention, and they only listen to a very small, select number of bands. So when one of their favorite bands brings out a new record, they're going to automatically listen to only that for several months. Or there's money, or there's promises of, you can come and attend this tour or this festival or this, that, and the other free of charge. There's some sort of incentive that drives it. I can guarantee you there will never, ever be that kind of incentive on this podcast. No, sir. I'm not somebody who respects the legacy. I'm not somebody who respects... I have respect for legacy in terms of what a band... I've got respect for what a band achieved. I've got zero respect for a band's legacy in that it's going to color my view, or I'm automatically going to be more lenient on them when it comes to later releases because their early stuff was good. Like, I've actually had people that have argued with me a little bit about that as well, even on this podcast. When I'll say something that's come out that I don't particularly like, they'll go, but they did all this amazing stuff, show some respect. Like, I am respecting them. I respect them so much, I expected them to put out fucking great music. If they don't, then I feel like you're not doing your legacy justice. You're not doing your talent as a songwriter any justice. Anyway, Max Cavalera defends the re-recordings of early Sepultura albums. It was a chance to do it again, but do it better. I love those re-recordings. I have not included the Cavalera Conspiracy in my list of favorite albums this year because I don't include re-recordings. But if I did, it would probably be in the top 5. It's fucking fantastic, that Schizophrenia re-recording. And it has gotten me thinking recently. I feel like if Sepultura post-Max had played the long game and they had changed their name and they had gone about doing things under a different name, and you had, Derek Green alongside former members of Sepultura in a new band, I actually think they would have ended up in the long run doing an awful lot better than they did as Sepultura. Because I still am a fan of Derek Green. I like Sepultura after Roots. There's a couple of, I think Nation is a great album. I think Roarback is a great album. I think there's excellent songs. Quite a few of them on a lot of the later records that they did, the late stage of their career albums. But I think it didn't matter what they did. Max Cavalera and Igor Cavalera were Sepultura, and I think they should have. I'd be curious to know how they feel about it when they're 65. I like how Andreas Kisser feels about it when he's 65. Will he have learned his lesson? Will he say, I think you might have a point about that. That's my opinion. It would have meant, they would have had to go touring in a van again, and they would have needed to earn their stripes. But I'm pretty confident they would have done that very quickly. Certainly would have had had a better go of it than sticking with the Sepultura name, and for the rest of the remainder of their career going, it's not as good as Arise or Beneath the Remains. I still wanted to talk about Tim fucking douchebag Lambesis, who is, as you should know, the frontman, the steroided frontman for As I Lay Crying, one of the fucking most sniveling, worthless bands to ever walk the face of the earth. He has now proven himself once again after previously having been found guilty of the attempted assassination of his wife. He's now captured on video beating up his dog. So, I'm not going to bother watching the video. Stuff like that I have no interest in seeing, but I do want to reiterate my policy where I do take over. If I were to, I know at the point that I'm recording this, tomorrow is President's Day in North America. Over in Canada, you guys are one step closer to freedom from Justin Scumbag Trudeau Day. Will we ever see freedom from the Labour government from old Two-Tier and his pals here in the UK? I don't know. But if I were to take over in a country and we were to catch a guy like Lambesis on film beating up a dog, there's only one way to deal with it. 3 enclosures in the Smith Museum of not the museum, in the Smith Chamber of Discipline. We've got a lion enclosure, we've got a crocodile enclosure, and we've got a hippo enclosure. We'll drag old Tim there. We'll say, Tim, I'm going to give you 2 minutes to choose which of those 3 enclosures you jump into. Or I'm going to throw you into a 4th enclosure, and maybe there we'll get something a little exotic, like some deadly python from the jungles of Brazil. So you either jump into one of those 3 or you get tossed into number 4. You've got 2 minutes to decide. Live stream the results on social media. And I assure you, after 1 or 2 such incidents, it'll be a little traumatic for a few folks who see it happen. But after 1 or 2 such incidents, no more animal cruelty. Only the biggest trash, the biggest fucking vermin that should not have the right to continue breathing, hurt animals, hurt women, hurt kids. And that guy has proven time and time again that he is a fucking lowlife and a scumbag. Punching your dog is just about the biggest dick move that you can possibly do, especially when you're this, you pretend to be this muscled up fucking tough guy. I mean, he is a fucking piece of trash. Snapcase documentary celebrating 4 decades of hardcore band's history in the works. That is a very, very good band. What was the album of theirs that I liked so much? The first one, I'm trying to think what the name was. Progression Through Unlearning. It's actually not their first album. It is their second. But yeah, there's a track on there called Guilty by Ignorance. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. We're not going to close off with Guilty by Ignorance, but we are going to close off. I want to say thank you very much, brothers and sisters in the Legion. It has been great being back with you once again. I hope you missed me while I was away. I'm back now. I'm back next week with part 2 of my countdown of my favorite 30 albums of 2024. Who made the cut? And who was left in the dark like a fucking loser. Whatever it is that you are doing, my friends, and wherever it is that you are, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you bad motherfuckers again next week.
Incinerator!